A woman's corpse was found 5 miles outside of Wayland, Massachusetts, in the early morning hours of July 4, 2011. The find was discovered by a woman riding a bicycle whose path took her near a swampy area. While riding, she was admiring the scenery. Suddenly, her attention was drawn to something fanciful and out of place. When curiosity got the better of her, the woman came closer and was horrified. Not far from the road, a dead girl lay among the grass and mud. To all appearances, the poor girl had not drowned, but had encountered unprecedented cruelty. A wound was visible on her neck, and a bungee cord was tangled in her hair. Coping with her excitement, the bystander dialed emergency services and reported what she had seen. Suddenly, her plans for the day changed. She put aside her business and waited for the police. Upon arriving on the scene, law enforcement officers pulled the body onto dry land and examined it, after which it was immediately sent for forensic examination. The girl had been in the water for a short time, so her appearance had not undergone significant changes. Officers recognized 18-year-old Lauren Astley, universally wanted since the previous evening. Lauren had been reported missing the previous day after she failed to return home or turn up for a meeting with friends. CCTV cameras recorded her entering the shopping center where she worked as a sales clerk at around 10 a.m. on July 3rd and leaving the building at 6:45 p.m. after finishing her shift. It was established that Astley was on the phone with someone at this time. Unfortunately, that was the last time she was seen alive. She was never heard from after that. Malcolm, the heroine's father, began to worry. After all, his daughter was characterized by punctuality and was true to her word. Therefore, if she had said she would be home by the appointed time, she would do so. She would not change her route for no apparent reason. At most, she would have reported that she was running late. Mr. Astley therefore realized that something bad had happened, and without wasting time, reported the disappearance to the police. The police officers did not wait for the allotted time and started the search immediately. In parallel, the girl's family and friends joined in. By the way, word of mouth worked quickly, and the news that she was missing instantly spread among acquaintances. Soon in the parking lot of the local beach was found a red Jeep, the car of the missing. The car stood with the windows down, and her personal belongings, a purse and a laptop, lay inside the car. However, the girl herself was not in it. It was also unclear where she could have gone after leaving the vehicle so precariously. When Malcolm was informed of the discovery of the car, he immediately drove to the spot. There, he tried to figure out where his daughter had gone. He walked along the shore and shone a flashlight into the water, looking for her as if she had drowned. Lauren's friends arrived after him. They decided to spend the night at the site, hoping to be the first to spot her. All night they scoured the area and wondered where Lauren had disappeared to. The young men didn't know what to think or where to look for her. However, none of them could imagine that something irreparable had happened to Lauren. It seemed like something that only happened in the movies. The person you had been talking and laughing with not so long ago couldn't just disappear like that. Not 12 hours later, Lauren's body was found. The first person the officers called was her father. They informed about the terrible discovery and asked to come to the identification. Malcolm's eyes to the last refused to believe that the girl lying on the pathologist's table, his daughter. However, coming to his senses, the man officially recognized his child. In front of him lay his girl, young and bright, who recently had her whole life ahead of her. Unbearable pain pierced the man's heart. Nevertheless, nothing could be brought back or undone. At this point, he had to do two important things: to report the terrible news to his former spouse and find the culprit in the death of his daughter. When the sad news spread throughout the city, no one could not believe what had happened. Family and close acquaintances in one voice said that Lauren had no enemies or ill-wishers. The only one on whom suspicion involuntarily fell was her ex-boyfriend, Nate Fujita. His name was spoken with great hesitation, as everyone knew how much he loved Lauren and would never hurt her. However, the deformations that happen to a person who has gone through a breakup are different, and who knows what someone who is unable to let go of the past is capable of. First love. First love is a very strong feeling. Coming into a person's life, it changes it completely, ruins the usual way of life. Such emotions nourish and inspire, dilute reality with new colors. Together with it comes the first kiss, the first intimate experience, the first departure from the parental home, the first job, and so on. This is a very vivid segment of life, when some sensations are superimposed on others. But often such love is fleeting. Someone breaks up because they are separated by circumstances, someone could not cope with the resulting contradictions, and someone simply realized that they do not fit each other. After that, there remains a certain incompleteness and understatement, which excites until the end of days. One way or another, but most of us go through it. However, not everyone has the fortitude to get over it and move on, to thank the person for the time spent and say goodbye to them. This story is about the flip side of love, the heavy addiction and jealousy that ruined young hearts. Lauren Astley and Nate Fujita are the envy of the entire high school. She is a petite, pretty brown girl who stands out from everyone with her activity and uniqueness. He is a tall, ambitious soccer player, the object of adoration of many girls. Despite the fact that young people were acquainted from an early age, they revealed themselves to each other later. Their relationship began in high school and lasted 3 years. It was a very colorful romance with all the consequences. They fought and made up. They would break up and get back together. Both had a difficult character, but the lovers tried to cherish the fragile feeling that arose between them. This continued, at least for the first few years of their relationship. Lauren Dunn Astley was born in 1993 in Boston. She was the only child in the family of Mary and Malcolm. From this, their attention was completely focused on the little girl. Since both parents worked as teachers, important values were instilled in her from an early age. Their most important wish was for their daughter to grow up to be a good person. When Lauren was 6 years old, the couple Astley divorced. However, this did not affect the upbringing of the girl. Each of them still continued to care about her and support Lauren in all endeavors, and they have a young beauty was a lot. She was constantly fascinated by something, and her whole day was scheduled by the minute. Her versatile interests were amazing. Lauren was fond of tennis and soccer, sang in a musical group, and was a member of the Youth Symphony Orchestra. She was also a member of her church choir, a counselor at a children's camp, and had a starring role in a theater production of Annie at the local arts center. No school or town concert was without her participation. Many were amazed by her irrepressible energy. She was active and omnipresent. The second direction of the girl's hobbies was social activity. Astley participated in many charitable actions. At the age of 12, she helped victims of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, Louisiana. Afterward, she visited the area 2 more times on a similar mission. She had a big and kind heart, open to the world and people. Therefore, she cared for others more than she cared for herself. Everyone around her knew that she could be called upon at any time for help or advice. Nate Fujita went to high school with Lauren. He was an outstanding player on the school soccer team and showed great promise. By the way, he also dreamed of connecting his future life with sports. He was known as a diligent student and the soul of the company. The young man was the eldest son of Beta and Tom Fujita. It can be said that his family was prosperous and quite famous in certain circles. His father was a famous guitarist and professor at Berklee College of Music in Boston. He was different from many and was an unconventional person. Perhaps the romantic relationship between Lauren and Nate just on this ground. One day, the girl interviewed the boyfriend's father for a school assignment. After that, she began to appear in their house more often, and when young people stopped hiding their feelings, their parents began to communicate and go to visit each other. As I said earlier, the first 2 years of the relationship between the lovers were perfect. They were very attractive young people, and their couple was eye-catching. Nate and Lori did everything together, going out, playing sports, studying, and participating in activities. However, later on, from such a close connection became stuffy. The guy did not let the girl go anywhere alone and controlled everywhere. He was jealous of her to every pillar, and often he saw things that were not. Nathaniel wanted to get all her attention and not share it with anyone. This was the reason for the conflicts between them. They became more frequent as the young man began to react more aggressively. But at the same time, no one heard Lauren complain about any physical impact. In general, their relationship became like an emotional seesaw. The state of calm was lost. It didn't suit both of them, but they couldn't go back to their previous easy feelings anymore. Lauren more than once thought about the future, and closer to the end of her schooling decided on her future life. She outlined all the pros and cons of her relationship with Nate on a sheet of paper and clearly realized that it was time to say goodbye. She'd also always disliked the way he acted around her mom. Lauren had unwittingly projected their relationship onto her supposed life with him, and she didn't want that kind of behavior. On top of that, the impending enrollment played a big part. Their life paths were already diverging. Lauren was applying to Ilona University in North Carolina, and her boyfriend was invited to Trinity College in Connecticut to play soccer there. Breakup. Lauren announced the fateful decision on April 1st, 2011, on her birthday. She considered it the best timing, as there was still time ahead to come to terms with new realities and start their lives with a clean slate. Everyone had new acquaintances and busyness ahead of them that would help push the sad thoughts away. Nathaniel, however, did not share Lauren's aspirations. He felt a deep sense of loss and loneliness. He was no longer excited about going to college. He stopped practicing and partying. All he did all day was lie on the couch and watch TV. The guy fell into a deep depression that he could no longer control. All around noted that from a formerly active and energetic young man, he turned into a withdrawn and depressed. In addition, Fujita became addicted to alcohol and pot. In this way, he wanted to distract himself from the harsh reality. It was hard for Lauren to see him like that, much less be the cause of it. The girl asked her friends for advice on what to do in such a case and how to help him, but everyone recommended her not to interfere and to give him time to get over this pain on his own. Otherwise, he could regard her participation as a chance that everything could be corrected and returned. Her friend's advice was sound. She shouldn't have shown her face to him, for at the sight of her, his condition worsened. Unfortunately, the girl had become his trigger. Looking a little ahead, in the aftermath, her kindness and desire to help turned against her. After graduation, Astley, along with her friends, organized a big party, which was attended by about 150 people. The event was held under a huge dome, where young people danced and had fun. Among the invitees also turned out and the ex-boyfriend of the heroine. At the party, Nathan came quite drunk. Seeing Lauren dancing in the middle of the dance floor, he approached her to talk, but she asked him not to bother her and not to ruin the party. There was no point in having idle conversations. Everything had been said several times before. And secondly, she did not want to communicate with him in such a state. However, the guy kept up with her and asked her to start all over again. With each passing minute, his mood worsened, and his aggression manifested itself with greater force. At one point, he became so angry that he stepped aside and hit the pole holding the structure with all his might. In response, the structure staggered and collapsed. The celebration was hopelessly ruined. Everyone expressed displeasure and a desire for Nathan to leave the party. Later, Lauren came to her mother in tears and confessed to her that the former boyfriend does not leave her alone and follows her everywhere. The girl added that at the graduation event, he wouldn't let anyone dance with her and behave disgustingly. He was angry that she was happy without him. Suspect. When the police learned Lauren was missing, the first thing they did was to question everyone she was close to. One way or another, all roads led to Fujita. Only he seemed to have a motive to harm her. However, his entire entourage assured her otherwise. However, officers in the course of their practice had more than once come across cases where crimes were committed by people who were not expected to do so. Nathaniel and his mother met the detectives on the doorstep. During the conversation, the boy looked confused. He seemed impressed by the sudden disappearance of his beloved. He admitted that he had seen her recently, around 7 o'clock in the evening. The girl stopped by him in her car, after which they had a nice conversation, and then she drove away. According to the guy, their conversation did not take more than 5 minutes. In addition, the young man added that at the time of Lauren's disappearance, he was at home and did not go anywhere. True, his alibi was difficult to confirm since he was alone at the time. His mother agreed with her son's words. Mrs. Fujita admitted that she had also seen Nathan's ex-girlfriend that day. She visited her at the mall where the latter worked part-time. The woman was saddened by the changes that had occurred in her son. That's why she asked Lauren to talk to him. The fact is that the parents of the young man had already sought help from a psychiatrist, but his services were ineffective. Their son had lost all interest in life and just existed. Beta hoped Lauren's words would give him strength, or at least a sense of male pride in him so he could move on. The request had put a crimp in Lauren's plans, but the meeting wasn't supposed to take a long time, so no one knew about it. It turned out that the phone conversation recorded by the mall's security cameras had taken place between her and Nathan just after the meeting with his mother. The girl was still continuing to worry about her ex-boyfriend, so she dialed him and arranged to see him. At 7:05 p.m., Astley drove up to Fujita's house and sent a text message with the word "here." The information that Nathaniel and Beta provided was certainly valuable information for the police officers. However, it was not clear where Lauren had gone after that and why her car was left open on the beach. The case became clearer in the morning when the body of the poor girl was accidentally found in the swamp. Convinced that the corpse of the girl probably belongs to Lauren Astley, the detectives decided to visit Nathan again. This time, however, he was not at home. They didn't need his presence, though. The officers had a search warrant, needed evidence to confirm the version of the investigation about the involvement of the former lover in the murder. The examination began with the garage. Experienced specialists immediately became clear that something bad had happened in it. Somewhere on the floor were found bloodstains, and on the wall in a prominent place hung several elastic cords. They matched those tangled in the murdered girl's hair. Traces of blood were also found in the house. The doorknob, kitchen floor, kitchen sink, and bathroom sink contained faint splatters. It was obvious that someone had tried to mop them up, but had done so sloppily and apparently in a hurry. A black gym bag was found in the basement. Inside it were wet and muddy tennis shoes. In Nathan's bedroom, in a kind of hiding place, detectives found a pair of bloody shoes, wet, bloody clothes. The mud found on the shoes seemed to match the mud from the swamp where Lauren's body had been located. But the samples found had to be submitted to a lab for an official conclusion. Time later, experts confirmed the detectives' assumptions. They also determined that the blood found in Fujita's house belonged to the deceased. Undeniable evidence of Nathan's involvement in the ex-girlfriend's death had been obtained. However, his whereabouts were still unknown. Therefore, soon, the guy was declared wanted. The investigation of the case progressed with inconceivable speed. A few hours later, the suspect was found. All this time, he was staying with a cousin in a neighboring town. Eventually, on the morning of July 5, 2011, Nathaniel was arrested on suspicion of murder. At the time of his arrest, he was aloof and quiet, and offered no resistance. At the same time, he did not cooperate with the investigation during interrogation. He didn't say anything about the crime he was charged with. The detectives had two thoughts about it. Either he could not find an excuse for his behavior, or he was afraid to say too much. So he didn't say a word. Investigators' version. The investigation believed that Lauren Astley visited the ex-boyfriend after meeting with his mother. The girl was worried about him, so she decided to talk to him and cheer him up a little. After that, the two of them proceeded to Fujita's garage. There, a quarrel may have taken place, after which Nathan attacked her and began to strangle her with a bungee cord. After killing the girl, he drove her red Jeep to the beach and threw the car keys into a storm drain. By the way, they were later found. The intruder then returned home, put his lover in his car, and drove her to the swamp. Following this, he tried to hide the traces of the crime. Despite the fact that he had not previously been physically violent towards Lauren, it was obvious to everyone that her boyfriend was periodically unrestrained and capable of aggression. Thus, his motives were unwillingness to come to terms with the breakup and underlying resentment. During a preliminary hearing on August 23, 2011, Nathaniel was charged with first-degree felony assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. When the boyfriend was asked if he would plead guilty to the crimes charged, he barely audibly uttered, "No." So it became clear that his lawyers had engaged in foul play, having come up with a certain line of conduct and defense. As a result, the prosecutor filed a motion to keep the defendant in jail without the possibility of bail. The court granted the prosecutor's request. Trial. On February 13, 2013, Fujita appeared in court. Nathaniel's attorney, William Sullivan, pleaded the defendant's insanity. He did not deny that a murder had been committed, however. He stated the following. On the evening of July 3, 2011, due to severe clinical depression, the defendant had a psychopathic attack. At that time, the guy was unable to give an account of his actions, so he attacked the girl. Nathan's friends confirmed the words of the defender in terms of changes in his behavior. They told about the fact that he really changed and stopped appearing in the company. Everyone was struck by the fact that previously he was just sick of soccer and did not miss training even during illness. And after parting with Lauren overnight, he stopped being interested in something that was a huge part of his life. The psychiatrist that Fujita visited also spoke at the court hearing. It was he who diagnosed his patient and suggested medication and therapy. However, Nathaniel refused. At trial, it was suggested that the defendant's mental health problems may have stemmed not only from the painful breakup, but primarily because of the athlete's numerous repetitive head injuries. And the breakup exacerbated the situation and triggered a severe seizure. However, the prosecution was not in agreement with the arguments of the defense attorney. Prosecutor Lisa McGovern said that the defendant was aware of what was happening, acted in a planned and calculated manner, and the crime was committed out of base motives. It was found that the guy constantly stalked the girl and did not give her peace. Even that day, a few hours before the end of her working day, he appeared in the shopping center and watched her, which is confirmed by CCTV footage. And Lauren's situation at his mother's request was an opportunity for Nathan to put his criminal intent into action. Witness testimony corroborated the prosecution's case. Fujita was clearly unrepentant. One eyewitness reported seeing Nathan returning home on the unfortunate evening and music playing in his car. A cousin also gave denunciatory testimony against a relative. She said that on the evening of July 3rd, her brother called her and offered to hang out, but the girl was busy, so she refused, to what he got very angry and said that he wanted to distract himself, but apparently it will not work. The next day, when the news of Lauren's death became known, his cousin contacted him again. She asked him if he knew, to which he replied that no one would ever know the truth about her death or where the murder weapon was located. In addition, he admitted that he had driven the ex's car to the town beach. Thus, the sister realized that Nathaniel was involved in the incident and persuaded him to turn himself in. It turned out that in 2009, when the young people broke up once again, there was one curious incident. Lauren, together with her friends, went to the disco. There was a guy who did not hide his interest in her. After the breakup, Lauren decided to give a chance to a new admirer, and they even kissed. But Nathan saw this and lunged at his rival with his fists. He threatened to slit the young man's throat if he ever came near Lauren again. So it was clear that Nathan was a jealous man. And when he drank alcohol, he lost his temper and became capable of many things, especially given the nature of the injuries Lauren had sustained as a result of the murder. This event confirmed Fujita's violent rage and also indirectly pointed to him as the culprit. In addition, other heinous circumstances came to light. The body of the deceased was found to have wounds that had been inflicted before her death. Among them, there were clear signs of so-called defensive wounds. The girl had tried to resist. A forensic psychiatrist invited by the prosecution also assessed the defendant's condition. However, unlike the previous one, he stated that at the time of the crime, he was in his right mind and made informed decisions. The fierce struggle between the prosecution and the defense came down to the fact that if Fujita was found insane, his sentence would be significantly reduced. Of course, this did not absolve him of the charges, but it did greatly diminish his guilt. This trial was emotional in every sense. In attendance were relatives on both sides. These men had previously been friends with each other. In this situation, they were each hurting in their own way. Nathaniel's parents cried the whole time. They could not believe what had happened and felt immense guilt for their son. The weight of his actions fell on the shoulders of his loved ones. Mary and Malcolm were heartbroken. They had lost their only daughter prematurely. Lauren was dying in agony at the hands of the man she loved. Specialists concluded that the girl had lived for several minutes after the cord around her throat was tightened and cut. Lauren's mother wanted to understand why this had happened to her daughter and how long it had been planned. The verdict and life afterward. After a 3-week trial, on March 7, 2013, Nathaniel Fujita was found guilty on all charges. The jury took 1 day to reach a final verdict. The 20-year-old was sentenced to life in prison without parole. After the verdict, Lauren's father walked up to Nathan's parents and hugged them. His act showed the strength of the man's character and the depth of his heart. Both families had lost the most precious thing they had. Mary and Malcolm Astley later established the Lauren Dunn Astley Memorial Fund to teach teens about healthy relationships. They believed that the crime Nathaniel committed was preventable. The girl's family has dedicated their future lives to spreading awareness on how to avoid couple violence and get over a breakup. In 2024, the state superior court abolished mandatory life without parole sentences for those under the age of 20 at the time of the offense. Thus, Nathaniel had the opportunity to be free. Is that fair? Considering that he took the life of an innocent girl forever and deprived her parents of happiness and peace. There is an opinion that from love to hate is one step. Obsessive love combined with bouts of jealousy and selfishness sometimes leads to crazy acts. The story of the Fujita and Astley families is a sad example of this. Think of a scene from any movie in which the protagonist is running away from pursuit, but in the last seconds, when he is already safe, the villain's foot stops the closing door and the protagonist turns into a vulnerable victim. A young woman's morning began like this scene. She found herself trapped. We all know that in a state, law must always prevail. Not religion, not tradition, but the defense of human rights and freedom. However, some attitudes formed many years ago and stereotypes from childhood, imposed by society, affect the woman, and under the influence of unspoken rules, she continues to live with a tyrant and tolerates violence. Today, our reality is such that even in the modern world, these attitudes are still relevant and continue to change people's lives. Today, we will move to Central Asia, namely to Kyrgyzstan, and look at the customs and lives of people of the state with the oldest history. Kyrgyzstan is a country rich in natural beauty. After all, 3/4 of the country are mountains. Almost all of its territory is located within 2 mountain systems. The overwhelming majority of believers in Kyrgyzstan are Muslims. There are Christians, Orthodox, Catholics, and various Protestant movements. At the same time, Kyrgyzstan is a secular state. It is a state with a system where religion is separated from state power and which is regulated on the basis of civil rather than religious norms. The country's authorities punish members of the clergy for performing religious rituals that contradict the laws of the republic. But in the case of one fragile young woman who begged for help from the state and asked for protection, the authorities showed complete indifference. Asel Nogobayeva was born in 1986 in the city of Tokmak, Chue Oblast, Kyrgyzstan. After finishing school, the girl finished hairdressing courses and moved to Bishkek to find a job in a salon. It is easy to get lost in a large city, but sometimes it is much easier to meet people there. One day, Azamat Estebesov came to the hairdresser's shop where Asel worked to get a new haircut. He liked the pretty slender girl very much, and he invited her for a cup of fragrant coffee. The meeting became fateful for both of them. After all, Azamat also liked Asel very much. He seemed to be a simple, attentive man who was brought up in a prosperous family and was very hardworking. Asel's family approved of her daughter's choice because Azamat was very religious and honored Muslim traditions. Asel's parents did not see the disadvantages of the groom and with a calm heart blessed the marriage. At the age of 19, Asel married her beloved Azamat. Soon the firstborn child was born in the young family. A boy. It would seem that every man dreams of an heir, of someone who will continue the family. But in our story, the joy of fatherhood, as if a genie from a jug, caused the lowly and cruel demons of Azamat. So, on an ordinary evening, a simple family story turned into a real drama, which provoked a whole series of sad events. Asel and Azamat were bathing their son. The inexperienced father accidentally poured too much water on the child. He shook with fright and cried a lot. Asel reacted rudely and shouted at her husband. Azamat did not hesitate to hit her in the face in response. That same evening, Asel and the child went to her mother's house. Azamat repented and asked for forgiveness. He begged and said that this would never happen again. It is worth noting that the Kyrgyz mentality is very different from other mentalities. From childhood, girls are taught patience. A husband should be alone for the rest of his life because divorce is not welcomed, although it is not forbidden, and the Muslim religion plays an important role in creating and preserving a family by any means. Knowing the traditions and customs of the Turkic family, Asel, who herself grew up without a father, did not want her son to repeat her fate. The girl believed that Azamat raised his hand for the first and last time, and they would be able to continue living happily. Asel came back, but she was mistaken. A year later, the family returned from Bishkek to her native Tokmak to live near her parents. The return was joyful because Asel was expecting her second child. Asel was walking with her son on the playground near her home and met several classmates. They said hello and had a nice conversation. However, returning home from the walk, Asel again received a strong blow to the face. The blow was so strong that she fell and slipped on the linoleum. Unfortunately, this blow and fall triggered a miscarriage. After moving to Tokmak, Azamat became Asel's shadow. He stealthily followed her on the street. He was constantly looking for a reason for new conflicts. The man got a taste for it and could no longer refrain from beating her. Only his outer shell remained of the kind and attentive Azamat, although Asel had changed because his gaze was filled with anger and hatred. Asel has resigned herself to living under total control for the sake of her children. After all, she had another son again. The beatings did not stop for years. Asel's mother, knowing about her daughter's family drama, could not stand it and took her to her home. But the man did not stop. He came again and again for his family and begged for forgiveness, promising that this would not happen again. Tradition intervened again because in Kyrgyzstan, a son must grow up with his father. Such are the rules. Asel ended up going back 5 times. Life became a nightmare for Asel and she was tired of enduring it. After each day of painful beatings, she went to the police in the hope of getting help. But there is no criminal sentence for domestic violence in Kyrgyzstan. The maximum that was applied to Azamat was 3 days in the isolation center. Then he came back again, and this nightmare continued over and over again for 6 years. Azamat did not even want to hear about divorce. He threatened that if his wife filed for divorce, he would find her, the children and her family, and kill them all. During the period of the worst beatings, Asel's family took her to Italy. In Italy, Asel had big plans. She settled in with her brother, who helped her find a job. She worked 3 jobs, a nurse, a cleaner, and she walked dogs. The woman worked without weekends to save money for an apartment, to become financially independent, and to leave her tyrant husband. After 3.5 years, she had already saved enough money to buy an apartment and open a mini business. During the years in Italy, Asel saw a lot of new things. She communicated with interesting people, and gradually her moral state recovered. But her maternal heart ached for her children. After all, she had to leave them for long 3 years, for the sake that they had a bright future ahead of them. The woman knew that the father never beat the children and did not show aggression towards them, so she was calm about it. But when she returned from Italy, a bleak picture awaited her. The children were living in terrible conditions. In one small room they slept, ate, played, and even went to the bathroom. The children did not go to school or for walks. They didn't eat well. And again, tradition. Azamat raised real Turkic men and created truly harsh conditions for their existence. Instead of school, they attended a madrasa, a Muslim religious and educational institution where they learn religion and how to read the Quran. Asel took the children. Azamat did not mind. It would seem that she was saved from the cruel captivity, but Azamat began to pursue his Asel again. He called and offered to meet her. Asel was categorical and made it clear that in case of harassment she would file a police report. But this did not stop him. In the evening, Asel went to the store to get some dishwashing detergent. The store was very close by. On her way, she met Azamat, who was following her again. He grabbed her and threatened her with a knife and took her to a dark, remote place. There, right on the street, he brutally beat Asel and took advantage of her. The strange sounds were noticed by passers-by who called the police. On September 1st, 2022, Asel wrote a statement to the police on her ex-husband about rape. He was detained and a criminal case was opened. Asel's family was sure that he would go to trial and the torment for all of them would end. But no. Azamat's family became active and could not accept that their son was a tyrant. Azamat's mother and sisters repeatedly begged Asel to withdraw the application. Another strange tradition. A woman in Kyrgyzstan cannot report her husband because it is a great shame. To beat, humiliate, and rape a woman is not shameful. Azamat's relatives discouraged Asel as much as they could. By deception, they succeeded. Asel took back the application in exchange for Azamat's application for relinquishment of parental rights. But he is still officially their father. The Sokoluk District Court dismissed the case because of the victim's counter-application and reconciliation of the parties. After being released, Azamat started a new wave of harassment and threats. He wrote daily threatening messages to Asel, changed phone numbers to relentlessly continue his pressure. He openly said in voice messages that if he caught Asel, he would kill her. He waited for her in the driveway. He waited for her at work. He followed her everywhere. For 3 months, Asel's relatives took turns living with her and her children, protecting her from Azamat's attacks. But this did not save the woman from the second violence. On January 31st, 2023, the woman went to the police again and reported that her ex-husband had again taken advantage of her by using force. A criminal case was also opened and the suspect was detained. After the investigation, the materials were sent to the court. The family was waiting for the decision and expected a real term of at least 5 years. On the day when the trial was to take place, the judge and 2 prosecutors invited Asel to a separate office. Azamat was there. In front of her eyes, they took off his handcuffs, informing him that they applied 3 years of probation instead of 5 years of imprisonment. In fact, he remained free. The court considered such a decision appropriate because Azamat has an elderly mother with a disability and 2 children from his marriage to the victim. Let me clarify that probation is a set of measures applied to convicted persons. The purpose of probation is to correct behavior and prevent the commission of new crimes. Asel was crying. She felt herself driven into the darkest corner from which there was no escape. Despair and fear once again confidently settled in the woman's life. But Asel did not wait for new attacks. She no longer believed anyone and did not listen to Azamat's relatives. Asel took down all the beatings. She hired a lawyer and filed an appeal with the Chue Regional Court. The lawyers provided the court with all the threats in the messages, all the voice messages, and this time, the case went to court. But a series of different events constantly postponed the hearing, bringing closer the worst day of Asel. First, the lawyer fell ill and the trial was postponed for a month. The second and third hearings were also postponed for inexplicable reasons. At the 4th hearing, Asel begged not to postpone the hearing any longer because she was afraid not of beatings, but of death. Azamat continued to walk around freely and make attempts on Asel's life. On the eve of the meeting, he sent her a photo of a black backpack with a knife and a rope, with the caption, "I am ready to meet you," at the bottom. But due to Azamat's refusal of the state lawyer and the involvement of a private lawyer in the case was again postponed indefinitely. With such indifference of justice and law enforcement agencies, Asel simply had no chance to save herself. September 20th, 2023 began as usual. At 6:30 a.m., Asel woke up her children. They had breakfast together, and the caring mother accompanied her eldest son to school, wishing him a good day. Asel was about to leave the house too, so she didn't close the door, finishing getting ready. She brushed her hair as the front door suddenly opened. Azamat came in very quickly and very aggressively. The woman did not have time to react and close herself in the bathroom. He immediately hit her twice on the head, after which Asel fell into a stupor of incomprehension about what was happening. After the blows on her head, the pervert grabbed her by the throat and started strangling her. Asel lost consciousness. Nothing further. Asel lay unconscious. Sometimes she heard Azamat's voice, and it seemed to her that everything that was happening was a terrible dream. But the strong crying of her son brought her back to reality. Asel realized that she was awake. The boy covered himself with a blanket and crying repeated, "Daddy, don't do it." But his father ordered to keep silent. Otherwise, he would slaughter him too. Asl did not remember how from the bathroom, where she tried to hide, she found herself in the kitchen. He threw the unfortunate woman to the floor like an unnecessary thing, then picked her up again and continued to abuse her. In a moment, the pervert had lifted a seal up again and leaned her against the wall and was stabbing her face and neck with a clerical knife in cold blood. The next time Asl regained consciousness, she looked around and saw that everything was covered in blood, but she didn't realize what was happening. She had lost a lot of blood and her throat was dry. She kept asking for a drink. Her once beloved husband brought her a bucket of rags, and in it was water mixed with blood. The giver had gotten so into the taste of blood that he started picking out a knife. He went through all the kitchen knives and tried them on, choosing the one that would reach a seal's heart. But suddenly the door opened, and police officers entered the house. It turned out that a neighbor from downstairs heard the screams, and knowing about the difficult situation of Asl and her ex-husband, called the police, which saved her life by stopping the horrible torture. Azamat Estebesov resisted and attacked the officers with a knife. In such turmoil, no one realized what had happened. The whole apartment was drenched in blood. Azamat started cutting Asl in the bathroom, then dragged her to the kitchen through the hallway. He cut off his ex-wife's nose and ears and inflicted multiple wounds on her face and neck. He cut her throat, slashed her face, and beat her very badly. The district police officers arrived and called an ambulance. After assessing Asl's appearance, they began to look for the cut organs in a hurry, but they were nowhere to be found. Would you be surprised to know where they found the woman's ears and nose? In the monster's pocket. In pursuit of lost time, the police officers took Asl by their car to the 4th City Hospital in Bishkek. But there they did not provide her with first aid, explaining that according to her propiska, she did not belong to their hospital. Not only the doctors did not provide the victim with first aid, but they did not even stop the bleeding. Only in the second hospital, she received first aid and stopped bleeding. She was then sent to the National Hospital, where she was operated on for 9 hours. 6 doctors worked meticulously to restore Asl's face. The found amputated organs were carefully delivered by the district police officers. The doctors meticulously collected everything, as the earlobes and nerve nodes were completely severed. Azamat did it with a special knife. It was very delicate work. The nose was also completely cut off. In the hospital, Asl did not regain consciousness for a long time. She miraculously survived. Psychologists warned that recovery would be long, and it would be very dangerous. The young, beautiful woman was disfigured. A criminal case under the article, "Causing Grave Harm to Health" of the Criminal Code of the Kyrgyz Republic, was initiated on the fact of the attack. The police detained the suspect in the commission of the crime. He was sent to a pre-trial detention center. On September 27, 2023, the sentence against Azamat Estebesov was changed to 8 years of imprisonment. By presidential decree, 9 judges were dismissed from their posts. Among them is the judge of Sokolok District Court of Choi Region Kielbek Toktomamatov, who released the man under probation supervision. The decree of the head of state says that Toktomamatov was dismissed in connection with the violation of the requirements of impeccable behavior of a judge. In addition to him, Sadir Japarov, by decree of November 1st, at the suggestion of the Council of Judges, prematurely terminated the powers of a number of judges who in one way or another violated the requirements of impeccability. 6 investigators were involved in further investigation of the incident. They brought up all the previous cases of Azamat Estebesov and studied them again. They took into account all the facts they found, and on them in the new indictment case, there were already 11 articles. At the end of December 2023, all investigative activities were completed, and on January 9, 2024, the first court hearings began. Azamat Estebesov did not admit guilt on any of the 11 episodes charged against him. He avoided answering the judge's questions in every possible way, and in some cases stated that he was possessed by a demon, so he could not speak. He behaved aggressively towards the witnesses, because of which the trial was postponed. On January 26, 2024, the final closed court session was held. Judge Taalaykul Tadirkulova taking into account all the details of such a complex case, sentenced Azamat Estebesov to 20 years of imprisonment without the right to apply probation. He must also pay 2 million sums to his ex-wife and a fine of 80,000 sums to the state. The judge decided to count 1 day spent in pre-trial detention center for 2. In spring, the defendant filed an appeal, but the sentence of 20 years imprisonment remained unchanged. Asel Nogoybayeva noted that she would go further and demand that the former spouse be sentenced to life imprisonment, and all those involved in encouraging his actions be publicly removed from office and punished. Let this be an example to everyone. I want no woman in Kyrgyzstan to endure the pain that I and my family are carrying. Thank you all who do not stand by, the victim concluded. Asel Nogoybayeva's family and activists asked that her ex-husband be given a life sentence. After all, despite the imprisonment, Azamat continued to text threats to Asel with a warning that he would still go out and find her. The case of Asel Nogoybayeva, about the powerlessness of a woman before the law of the country, and how a once loved and loving person turns into a cold-blooded monster in an instant, has finally come to its conclusion under the law. This case caused a wide public resonance throughout Kyrgyzstan. Asel's sister, Diana Yelkin, appealed to MPs to pass a law on domestic violence. She said that if the MPs do not pass a law on domestic violence, she will make them look at Asel's face without bandages and think what one wrong decision is worth. Asel's sister published a petition asking for a life sentence without parole for her sister's ex-husband. She recalled that her sister divorced her husband 5 years ago because of beatings and inadequate behavior of her spouse, but he did not leave her alone even after the divorce, stalking, beating, and abusing her. Azamat Estebesov is a dangerous person for society. People like him should not live free. They are obsessive and manic people. People like him should be behind bars. We ask for a life sentence for this monster. He has already killed a seal morally. He mutilated her face in front of her young son. People like him should be sentenced for life without the right to parole. She appeals in the petition. It doesn't matter what country it happened in. Family violence often takes monstrous forms. The topic of domestic violence should unite all women of the world. And we should not forget that religion is not an indicator that a person is adequate. Now Asel has a new life. Her new identity brings her great suffering. Despite the fact that Asel's wounds are gradually healing, full recovery of hearing and breathing functions will be long. In her interview, Asel told how she saw her face for the first time after the tragedy. There were no mirrors in my room, since I was not allowed to look at myself. It was a day off. My doctors were not there along with the doctor on duty, so I went to the first floor for dressing. I had my bandages removed, and there was a metal operating lamp. The doctor on duty had not put it away. I saw myself in the reflection. I'm afraid of myself. I can't look at myself in the mirror. I could already see my ears. From the shock, I lost consciousness. 2 weeks later, Asel saw her face completely. Her brother gave her a dressing at home. All the mirrors in the house were removed in advance, except for one mirror in the bathroom, because it could not be removed. When her brother left for 3 seconds, Asel quickly stood up and decided to look at herself. After seeing her reflection, she fainted. She had a very strong hysteria. Asel said that no one should ever see such ugliness. But the restoration of Asel's face is still ahead of her. Before the plastic surgery, she will have several operations to reconstruct her face, restore the frame of her ears and nose. These are surgeries that require long preparation, skin augmentation, and a long recovery period of at least a year. Also, Asel has lost her hearing by 20%, which will definitely be corrected as well. The difficulty is that these operations are not performed in Kyrgyzstan. Such complex operations are carried out in Turkey or in other countries, and this requires very large funds. Mikhail Surer, a plastic surgeon from Turkey, offered to perform the surgery free of charge, that is to cover all the costs. At first, Kyrgyz doctors told him that Asel had only the tip of her nose, but when Surer saw the woman's face without bandages, he was extremely shocked. It turned out that plastic surgery alone would not do the trick in this case. First, a whole series of operations to restore organs was needed. The surgery to restore the ears and nose of Asel Nogoybayeva, who was mutilated by her ex-husband, will cost at least $45,000. Asel's sister, Diana Yelkin, who is actively engaged in disseminating information and raising funds for the operation, noted that all complex operations will be carried out in Turkey. Unfortunately, we have not raised even half of the needed $45,000. In addition, there are other expenses for accommodation, psychologist, rehabilitation, interpreter, medicines, and so on, Diana Yelkin said. I have more pictures of her without bandages. They are very scary. They are not for the faint of heart. I have been unable to come to my senses since yesterday, and I can't accept this face because there is nothing left of her ears and nose. Thank you to the doctors. They did everything they could. The main thing is that sepsis and gangrene did not go, said the sister of the victim. Diana Yelkin notes that if they cannot raise the necessary amount of money in the near future, she will publish her sister's face without bandages. Let the whole world see the true face of lawlessness, the true face of a victim of violence. Let every judge, policeman, deputy hang a picture of the mutilated Asil and look at her photo before making the necessary decisions, laws. If a year ago the judge had not given probation to this monster, all this would not have happened. The family and Asil were hoping for the law, for independent judges. Now we are making a challenge to everyone, a challenge to the judiciary of Kyrgyzstan. Diana regularly organized events to draw the attention of the Kyrgyz public to the problem of domestic violence against women. So far, fundraising has been held to help restore Asel Nogoybayeva's health. Asel's support, despite the terrible ordeal she endured, is an example of courage and determination in the fight against violence. Asel, who herself has yet to recover mentally and physically from 12 years of beatings, dreams of opening a foundation to help women who have also been abused like herself. After being abused, you can't stop helping others. To conclude the story, the real ugliness that no one should see is not Asil's face at all, but the essence of her ex-husband. Even with fatigue and pain in her eyes, one can see that Asil is a very feminine, gentle, and beautiful woman. It does not matter how her face looks now. She is a beautiful woman, because her soul and heart are beautiful. I would like to appeal to all women. Never tolerate and do not expect your chosen one to change, run away, and never come back. All nations have tyrants. Financial hardships can befall anyone. Some resolve their difficulties swiftly, while others may struggle for years. However, how one chooses to overcome these challenges is crucial. While some work diligently, earning money through honest labor, others resort to crime for quick gains. There's also a third group willing to partake in the creation of controversial, yet in-demand adult content, naturally for a substantial reward. Engaging in this line of work isn't illegal, but actors, often actresses in this genre, face severe societal judgment and criticism. Nonetheless, the allure of rapid wealth and the pursuit of dubious fame can override moral principles. Moreover, many now operate remotely, setting up studios at home and conducting live broadcasts. Yet, one must not overlook the potential severe emotional harm to the actresses, leading to real tragedies. The case of Carol Maltesi, a young mother and actress in adult films, is a stark example of what striving for fame and money in this industry can lead to. She didn't view her work as immoral. She was merely striving for financial independence, planning to retire once she had enough to support herself and her young son. However, she was never able to leave the industry, and tragically, her body, once admired by thousands of fans, was eventually found dismembered on a rocky cliff beside a road. Childhood and early years of Carol Maltesi. Carol Nicole Maltesi was born on September 19, 1995, in a small Italian province, the only child of her parents, Fabio and Josephine. She had Italian maternal roots and Dutch paternal heritage. When she was just 4 years old, her parents decided to divorce, and she stayed with her mother. Subsequently, her father moved back to his homeland, the Netherlands, remarried, and had more children. Josephine chose to remain in Italy, raising her daughter alone as her former husband offered little support. They lived in a small community called Sesto Calenda in the province of Varese. The mother worked multiple jobs simultaneously to provide her daughter with everything necessary, a good education, and the opportunity for a better life. Carol grew up to be a beautiful, kind, and sociable girl with many friends and an easy rapport with others. As a schoolgirl, she actively participated in sports, particularly horseback riding, and regularly attended a dance studio. Maltesi was fluent in 3 languages, loved traveling across Europe, read extensively, and could engage in conversation on almost any subject. As a teenager, she became a true beauty with a slim, feminine figure, already having many admirers and suitors, and she loved being the center of attention. After finishing school, she entered a technical university to study industrial design, arts, and fashion, where she soon became one of the top students in her class. Unexpected pregnancy. During her freshman year, Carol developed a romantic relationship with a young man a year her senior who was studying at the Faculty of Architecture and Design. In the fall of 2020, when Carol was 20 years old, she discovered she was pregnant. This news was a complete surprise to both her and the child's father. They were both students and utterly unprepared for such a development. Nevertheless, Carol firmly decided to keep the baby. In 2016, the young couple had a son together, and their lives changed drastically. Both had to leave school because they lacked the funds to support themselves and their newborn. The new parents decided to move to Verona, where there were more opportunities to earn a living and provide for their family. Carol got a job as a sales consultant in a large cosmetics and perfume retail chain shortly after her son turned 1, while her boyfriend worked on various projects from home, also taking care of their son. New love. In the middle of 2019, Carol unexpectedly fell for another man named Angelo, with whom she began a passionate affair. The couple secretly met for about 6 months, renting hotel rooms, messaging each other at night, and striving to spend every free moment together. However, just before the new year, the father of Carol's child found out about her relationship and decided to part ways with his unfaithful partner. Maltesi felt this was for the best since she was planning to leave for her new boyfriend anyway. But then a problem arose. Angelo lived in his parents' house, and Carol couldn't move there with her child from a previous relationship. Therefore, they decided to rent a place together, but at that time, the coronavirus pandemic swept the world, leaving the young couple jobless and unable to afford their own apartment. Carol eventually moved into the home of her new boyfriend's parents and decided to temporarily leave her 4-year-old son with his biological father until the situation stabilized and she could bring him to live with her. Meanwhile, the situation worsened. A widespread self-isolation regime was declared, everyone was confined to their homes, and Carol faced significant financial difficulties. During this challenging period, Angelo and his parents supported Carol as best they could. She effectively lived at their expense in their home, unable to contribute financially to her young son. Moreover, Carol's mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which was progressing, and the woman needed costly therapy. Unexpected source of income. Amidst the lockdown, Maltesi frantically considered how to earn money from home to support her son and ill mother. She decided to try earning through social networks and her own YouTube channel, sharing about life in isolation and the challenges she faced. However, this content didn't attract much interest, but her striking appearance as a novice blogger drew attention, earning her compliments and even some inappropriate proposals in the comments. A subscriber suggested she create an account on the platform OnlyFans, noting that her striking looks would be highly appreciated there, and she could become a star and earn quickly. Carol took this advice and registered on the service under the pseudonym Charlotte Angel. She began creating revealing content, posting her intimate photos and short videos. Quickly, she amassed a significant following willing to pay for such content. Carol soon began earning well, but kept from her boyfriend and close relatives how she was making money and what she was being paid for. Over time, her content became more explicit and sophisticated as she strove to please her fans, and she herself enjoyed this line of work. Carol hid the details of her job as long as she could, but about 6 months later, someone she knew stumbled upon her account. Rumors spread, and soon everyone knew how she was making a living. She wasn't too upset, and even tried to justify it by claiming that her work was also a form of art that brought in a decent income and fully satisfied her. However, the conservative Italians were not ready to accept this, so friends and close ones gradually turned away from Carol, believing she was engaged in something immoral, and associating with her might tarnish their reputations. Carol herself regarded this attitude towards her work as prejudice and was confident that she would achieve success, becoming wealthy and famous. Adult film star soon, the beauty became so popular that adult film studios took serious interest. Several directors approached the sultry Italian with offers to star in their films, and she readily agreed. She participated in group shoots and public performances. Word of her activities quickly reached Angelo, who naively thought his girlfriend was working remotely as a designer, but sometimes went to the office. He was shocked and at a loss for what to do next, as he hadn't planned on breaking up with her. However, when his parents learned about the situation, they insisted he break up with this fallen woman immediately, lest she disgrace their entire family. By then, Carol had enough money to rent her own place. Her OnlyFans account was extremely popular. She regularly received offers from directors, and her fees kept increasing. In interviews, she claimed she didn't plan to do this all her life and intended to eventually finish her education and try her hand as a designer or modeler. But for now, she truly enjoyed what she was doing and was well compensated for it. Nonetheless, Carol often spoke about the constant moral pressure from those around her, their judgments and attempts to shame her, causing certain psychological traumas. She called her work art and advocated for every woman's right to choose her profession without fear of judgment. Attempt to move on and a new dominant lover. At 25, Maltesi moved to a small town called Rescaldina in the Milan province, deciding to start over. She planned to leave her career in the adult industry behind and got a job as a sales consultant at a perfume boutique. It seemed she had completely changed her life, but this was only temporary. A few months later, she met a 42-year-old local banker named Davide Fontana, who was passionate about photography, specializing in nude styles. They met online where he was seeking a model for his explicit projects. Carol responded to his offer, and during their first meeting, the pair felt an irresistible mutual attraction. Fontana had been officially married for many years, but this did not stop him from starting a relationship with the young beauty. They began dating, organizing explicit photo sessions that invariably ended in intimacy. Soon, he learned about Carol's past activities and convinced her to return to filmmaking, noting her real talent. David had mixed feelings for her. He loved her, wanted to possess her, but also liked seeing his young lover in adult films. In March 2021, the banker divorced his wife and started living with Carol, realizing their most explicit and sinful fantasies. He helped her create content that was incredibly popular on OnlyFans, but he took a cut of the profits from their joint work. Carol soon became so successful and popular that foreign directors and studios began offering her lucrative contracts for shoots. Fontana was quite jealous in life, reacting sharply when others paid attention to his girlfriend on the street or tried flirting with her, but there were no restrictions or limits when it came to filming. He treated it as a regular job, which the actress was completely comfortable with. A few months later, Angelo called her, confessing he missed her greatly. He proposed they get back together, noting he was ready to accept her line of work and wouldn't interfere or restrict her. Carol was touched, but admitted she already had another man. Nevertheless, they continued to communicate. But when Davide learned about this, he became enraged, threatened Angelo, and even set his car on fire. Angelo immediately reported to the police about the threats to his life and property damage. The authorities issued a restraining order preventing Fontana from approaching Angelo, but no evidence of the banker's involvement in the arson was found, so he did not compensate for the damage. Workplace romance. The in-demand actress often flew overseas for shoots, and her subscribers numbered over 30,000. Carol was saving up to buy her own home to take her son with her and planned to leave the adult film industry, find another job, and focus on raising her son. Meanwhile, she began making custom videos, which proved to be a lucrative business. Fans sent her their own scripts of what they wanted to see, and she brought their fantasies to life for a handsome fee. Fontana continued to help her with filming and editing. They still lived together and shared the profits. In September 2021, Maltesi met an actor named Salvatore Galdo on a film set, who was her partner in several explicit films. However, real feelings ignited between them, and they started a romantic relationship. They dated secretly, fearing what Davide might do to her new lover. She waited for the right moment to tell the banker everything and break up with him for good. A few months later, Galdo gave her an engagement ring, asking her to become his lawful wife, and she joyfully accepted. By the end of the year, Carol had saved enough money to buy her own home. She planned to take her son, marry Salvatore, and finally decided to talk to Fontana. The man took the news surprisingly calmly. It seemed he understood everything and was ready to let her go to her new lover. But they still had several unfinished projects for which they had already been paid. They agreed to complete the work and then peacefully part ways forever. The mysterious disappearance of Carol. At the beginning of 2022, Maltesi unexpectedly vanished. She stopped appearing in films, ceased online streams, didn't communicate with colleagues, and accepted no new offers from directors. Many knew she had planned to leave the industry, so they assumed she had done just that. However, even her friends and fiancé, who were very concerned, couldn't reach her. Carol didn't answer calls but responded to messages and messengers, claiming she was fine, had decided to radically change her life, and needed time for herself. To her fiancé Salvatore, she wrote that she had contracted COVID-19, was self-isolating, and they couldn't see each other for a while. Apparently, this explanation satisfied him, as he did not raise the alarm either a month or 3 months later. On social media, new posts occasionally appeared on her account, but she hardly interacted with anyone, limiting herself to terse and brief responses. According to the latest photos on Carol's page, she had gone on a seaside vacation without telling anyone. Parts of an unidentified body in bags. On March 20th, 2022, a passerby was walking along the outskirts of the Italian community of Borno, on a road along a rocky cliff. He was suddenly drawn to large black trash bags lying on the slope near a body of water. The area was scenic and deserted, so the man was annoyed that someone had decided to dump trash there. He went down to the nearest bag and tried to lift it, but it was quite heavy. The real horror struck him when he saw human fingers poking through the torn polyethylene. The man immediately reported his gruesome discovery to the police, and the responding officers found 4 bags containing a human body divided into 18 parts. The remains were so disfigured that identification seemed impossible. Forensic experts determined it was a young woman who had died at least 2 months earlier, but they could not establish the cause of death. The body had been in a freezer before someone dumped it off the cliff. Presumably, the criminal drove here, simply throwing the bags down, hoping that in such a secluded place they would remain undiscovered for a long time. The bags tore on impact, causing some of the contents to spill out. Clearly, the criminal had done everything possible to keep the remains unidentified for as long as possible by removing all distinctive features. Pieces of skin were cut off in areas likely covered by tattoos. However, parts of these tattoos remained but were severely damaged. The skin in those areas had been burned with hot objects, cut, and doused with acid. Nevertheless, by piecing together bits of the tattoos and comparing them with a database of missing persons, the police concluded that no one was looking for a woman with such features. This was odd, leading to the speculation that the deceased was not local. This remained a belief until a news report about the body was broadcasted, asking anyone who might recognize the described features to come forward. Soon after, a woman who appeared in adult films came to the station and said that based on the description of the tattoos, she recognized her colleague, who had disappeared in early January. The actress mentioned that the deceased worked under the pseudonym Charlotte, but she did not know her real name. This information proved crucial, as law enforcement now knew what the girl looked like in life, and they quickly established her identity and real name. The peculiar fiancé. As soon as the deceased's name became known, it was revealed that she had gotten engaged to her colleague, Salvatore Galdo, shortly before her disappearance, who, curiously, had not reported his fiancée missing. This led to the first suspect being found and detained. However, the man was clearly upset by the news of his beloved's demise and puzzled as to why he himself was under suspicion. According to Salvatore, he had kept in touch with the woman through messengers and social media, providing their correspondence as proof. Thus, he had no idea that Carol had long been deceased. He claimed that his beloved had contracted COVID-19 earlier in the year and was self-isolating, which is why he hadn't visited her. When police asked why he hadn't called her to check if she needed help, he said he had spoken by phone with Fontana, who was nearby, and had promised to look after the woman. The fiancé's story was disjointed and unconvincing, but his testimony brought a second suspect into the case, who needed to be detained and interrogated. However, there was no need to search for David, as he himself turned up at the station the next day to report a person missing, the horrifying truth. Fontana, obviously, did not expect the body to be found so quickly, so he hadn't been following the news. When he learned that Carol had been found and identified, he became alarmed but still believed the detectives would not track him down. However, when the police arrested Salvatore, the man realized this person would lead law enforcement right to him, as they had communicated by phone, and he had concocted a story about COVID-19, promising to take care of his fiancée. David was visibly nervous, consistently contradicting his own statements, and the story he told was highly implausible. According to him, he and Carol had been very close, but they hadn't seen each other for several months, and she had stopped making contact. He couldn't explain why he had only contacted the police now. Under pressure, Fontana eventually began to testify, confessing that he had accidentally ended Carol's life. He claimed that in early January they were filming extreme content for a client who had paid a large sum. The script required David to bind the woman, tape her mouth shut, put a bag over her head, and then brutally beat, torture, and torment her using various tools, including a hammer. They had agreed that he would not hit her with full force, but she would act as if she were in severe pain. However, during the process, he supposedly went too far, misjudged a hammer blow, and fractured her skull. When he removed the bag from her head, he saw she was in death throes, but instead of calling for medical help or trying to assist her, he, out of mercy, decided to end her suffering with a final hammer blow. Then, the criminal, allegedly in a panic, dismembered the body but, unsure what to do next, simply stored the remains in his freezer for over 2 months before deciding to dispose of them, reconstructing the actual events. The investigation revealed that the mysterious, perverse client was Davide himself, who had contacted the woman using a fake account. Evidently, he didn't want to let her go and devised a sophisticated plan of revenge because she had decided to leave him. Additionally, during the torture session, the man extracted the password to her phone, which supposedly was also part of the script and a client's whim. On January 11th, around 9 in the evening, Fontana ended the woman's life by fatally striking her with a hammer. The next day, he purchased a large freezer using the deceased's credit card, as well as a saw and an axe from a hardware store, which he used to dismember the body. He made every effort to disfigure the body to prevent identification. He removed the tattoos along with the skin, and what remained of them, he tried to burn, shred, and literally erase. After that, David placed the body parts in bags and stored them in the freezer, where they remained for over 2 months. During this time, the criminal communicated with the victim's relatives and friends on her behalf, and also managed her social media, creating the illusion that Carol was alive. By the end of March, the criminal apparently thought the danger had passed and decided to dispose of the body by dumping it off a cliff in a deserted area. He hoped that the remains would either never be found, or, by the time they would have decomposed to the point of being unidentifiable. However, Davide was mistaken, and the body was discovered just 2 days later, with authorities tracking him down within a week. Trial and verdict. The most bewildering and incomprehensible aspect of this case was that nearly 3 months after the girl's disappearance, none of her relatives or friends had reported her missing. They were all satisfied with the responses in messengers and posts on social media. Even the fiancé, who thought Carol was ill, was not alarmed by the fact that she didn't answer calls and never tried to visit her. If someone had raised the alarm, the murderer would have been tracked immediately via the signal from the victim's phone, which had been on and in David's possession all this time. At the trial, Fontana expressed remorse and swore that he loved Maltesi and had taken her life unintentionally. He also claimed that he had planned to end his own life after her death, unable to cope with the grief. Naturally, such a statement sounded foolish, and nobody believed him, but the defense insisted that the incident was indeed an unintentional act of violence, despite the fact that the defendant himself had commissioned the recording of the brutal video. On June 12, 2023, the court found Fontana guilty of manslaughter and sentenced him to 30 years in prison. He was also ordered to pay compensation to the deceased's son in the amount of 200,000 euros, as well as 100,000 to Carol's mother and 50,000 euros to the father of her child. Surprisingly, the manner of assassinating was not deemed cruel, and the dismemberment of the body was not considered an aggravating factor, so the criminal could potentially be eligible for parole. The streets were dark and mostly empty. A young woman hurried out the door of her house, leashed her dog, and quickly got behind the wheel of the parked car. The car sped up and disappeared into the city's darkness. For the young runaway, it was the happiest night she had waited for 4 long years. Today, we will visit Lawrence, Kansas, and learn all about the life of this young woman and understand what made that particular night the happiest one for her. So if you're interested in finding out more about what happened, let's start from the beginning and share everything we know. Lawrence is a small town with a population of less than 100,000 people, ranked among the top 10 college towns. It's a wonderful place to live with minimal criminal activity. However, this incident completely disrupted the town's peace. On January 15, 2014, a young man contacted the local police department to report a disturbing, suspicious noise at his neighbor's house. Officers were dispatched to the address provided. However, no one answered the door, and the house was empty. They surveyed the surrounding area, and through the glass door in the backyard, they spotted a silhouette resembling a person lying down. Once inside, the police confirmed that it wasn't a mistake. The silhouette indeed turned out to be a person. On the living room floor, they were faced with a horrifying scene. A middle-aged man lay in a pool of dried blood. His hands were bound, and his throat had been cut so deeply that he was nearly decapitated. What was just a routine check turned into a criminal investigation, the motives of which needed to be determined. The identity of the deceased was quickly established. He was 52-year-old local entrepreneur and owner of a chain of pizza restaurants, Harold Sasco. He was born on September 11, 1961 in Florida, and was the 10th child out of 12 in his family. His relatives described him as a responsible and organized person who was always a leader in everything. Harold worked hard from the age of 14, dreaming of becoming a successful entrepreneur and owning his own business. After studying for about 2 years in college in Oklahoma, Harold worked as an administrator in a chain of pizza restaurants in Texas, where he learned management and was able to save money to achieve his goals. In the 1990s, the Sasco family moved to Kansas. Here, the enterprising Harold opened his own pizzeria. The business was successful, and within a short span of time, Mr. Sasco opened another pizzeria in Topeka and one in Lawrence. But who could have done this to the respectable man? Or could Harold have had a dark side to his personality that warranted what happened to him? Investigators quickly established that Harold Sasco had been living with 19-year-old Sarah McLynn for the last few years. However, she was not found at home and could have been the second victim of a brutal attack by a mysterious criminal. Sarah could have been the last person to see Harold alive, but where did the girl disappear to? In order to find the missing Sarah and uncover the mystery of the relationship between an adult man and a young woman, investigators had to piece together information about the complicated and secretive relationships that had been kept under wraps in the deceased Harold Sasco's home. Sarah Gonzalez McClin was born in 1994 in Topeka, Kansas. She was a normal child, energetic, cheerful, sweet, and smiling. The girl was interested in everything new and fearlessly tried new hobbies. In her teenage years, she faced harassment from a neighbor, and her mental state was shaken. Sarah was very scared by the harsh behavior of the adult man. She felt helpless. During this time, disputes between her parents became more frequent, which aggravated the situation at home and had a detrimental effect on the girl's state. She had to grow up early to try to understand adult difficulties, but the immature psyche of a teenager did not yield the desired result, and Sarah began to drown her problems in alcohol. But the addiction to drinking did not bring relief, and Sarah, having a nervous breakdown, wanted to end her own life. After the attempt, she was hospitalized, where she underwent treatment in a psychiatric clinic for some time. Sarah dreamed of leaving her parents' home, where she was suffocated by the toxic atmosphere with parents who could not divide their property during the divorce. She started saving money to rent a room and move out. During a period of despair, Sarah met an adult man who calmed her and boosted her confidence. That was Harold. He ran a mentorship program for youth, where he met Sarah, who got a job at one of his restaurants. By the age of 16, she was already taking orders at the pizzeria counter and diligently saving money for her dream. During this time, Sarah was quite happy. She left the hated home for a place where she felt needed. She made friends and established a relationship with Harold. In turn, he became a second father to her, providing the love and attention she sorely lacked. One day, in a confidential conversation, Sarah honestly told him about her problems, and they moved in. Harold offered Sarah to move in with him temporarily until she found separate accommodation. Sarah's mother was against it, but the girl was adamant. After enrolling in college, Sarah moved in with her mentor. It was a forced measure, which Sarah believed should not last long. Harold paid for her education. They established a friendly relationship and grew close as father and daughter. And for a long time, that was indeed the case. Interviews with neighbors and witnesses showed that Harold was a pillar of support for Sarah after the difficulties she had experienced in her family. She found refuge with an adult friend. Harold was both a mentor and a friend to her, despite their significant age difference. After Harold Sasco's demise, the police needed to find Sarah McClin as quickly as possible, as she could be in danger. Blood tests showed that all the blood belonged to the deceased, indicating that Sarah was alive and could indeed have been abducted. During the search, it was discovered that Sarah's biological father had reported her missing much earlier than the news of Harold's demise became known, but the police had been inactive, assuming teenage maximalism and her frequent departures from home. Detectives believed that the young woman might also have been a victim of an attack. Her search continued. However, the investigation considered various theories of the attack and crime. One of them was robbery. During the house inspection, it was found that some valuables and items had been stolen. Closets were partially emptied. Money and weapons owned by Harold were also stolen. There was disorder everywhere. Most of the items had been thrown out of the closets. After compiling lists of the stolen items, it became clear that only Sarah's belongings were missing. Her tablet, phone, and car were found on the parking lot of the house. For the investigators, this confirmed that the young woman had been abducted. Mr. Sasco's dog, Oliver, also disappeared without a trace, but why would the abductor take the dog? The disappearance of the dog puzzled the investigators, and they noted that Harold's car was also missing from the parking lot. The license plate was checked in the database, and the police began actively searching for the car. By tracking all the recordings from the city's surveillance cameras where the car could have been spotted, they managed to determine the direction of the suspected criminal, but the blurred frames did not allow them to identify him. Information about the stolen car with the possible criminal was distributed to nearby posts along the possible routes, but no clarifying information was received. While waiting for information about the car's movement, the investigators did not waste time. They actively questioned Sarah's friends and acquaintances, hoping to get more information about the unusual cohabitation of the young woman and the mature man. At that time, Harold Sasco had been married 3 times, but was divorced and lived only with Sarah. The fact that a 19-year-old woman was living with a 52-year-old man as friends was peculiar, but no other information about Sarah and Harold's relationship could be obtained. No one had ever seen them as a couple. Sarah had her own room in Harold's house. Could it be that this mature, well-to-do man really became a second father and mentor to the young, lost girl? It really seemed to be the case. Harold Sasco was viewed as a kind and sensitive person and a benefactor. His colleagues also confirmed no closeness between the boss and the employee. The investigation was at a standstill. After a critical 48 hours, Sarah McLynn had still not been found. Investigators were puzzled, but continued their search for the young woman. 3 days into the search efforts, an unexpected phone call to Sarah's parents' home turned the detectives' theory upside down. The awaited call was brief. The caller waited for an answer and then hung up silently. The police, anticipating a call from the suspected abductor, managed to trace it quickly. The caller's location was identified as a 24-hour store at a gas station in Bishop, Texas. Immediately heading to the location and reviewing surveillance footage, the police were shocked to recognize a female figure very similar to Sarah. The woman freely entered the store, made purchases, made the call, then left in Harold's car. Could it be possible that Sarah, whom the police were searching for as a victim of abduction, was actually the criminal and had fled, taking her beloved dog with her? On January 25, 2014, rangers in Everglades National Park in Dade County, Florida, found Sarah McLynn sleeping in the parked car with Oliver, Mr. Sasco's dog. Upon searching the car, several knives, an axe, and Harold's pistol were found. On February 1, 2014, after she waived her extradition hearing in Florida, Sarah was transported back to Kansas, where officers placed her in the Douglas County Jail. The car was seized and sent for inspection. Forensic analysis confirmed that the bloodied knife found was the weapon used in Harold Sasco's demise, but what led to such a brutal crime? During Sarah's interrogation, it was revealed that their relationship initially mirrored that of a father and daughter. He took care of her and told everyone she was his stepdaughter to avoid unnecessary questions. Sasco was aware of Sarah's difficult relationship with her parents. He knew she had been brutally assaulted by a man who had left her with cigarette-burn scars. She had tried to end her life, and she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. Harold promised to take care of her, but the supposed sanctuary included unrestricted access to marijuana and alcohol. Cocaine and ecstasy were also available. He charged her rent, and she bought her own food. He gradually gained control over everything she did. After living together for about 6 months, Harold confessed his love for her. Sarah rejected him, but he persisted in his advances. Eventually, he demanded intimacy as a condition for her to stay with him. Harold took her salary, claiming it as compensation for what he spent on her upkeep daily. He threatened to sue her if she left. Harold degraded and insulted her daily. One day, Harold told Sarah that she was not attractive enough and that men preferred women with more voluptuous figures. With such an appearance, he said, she would never find true love and would never be appealing to men. Sarah objected but felt she had no choice. He paid for her to have a nose job and buttock implants. After these surgeries, Sarah's debt to Harold increased by $10,000. Her last paycheck from the pizzeria was $265. He demeaned her and demanded total submission. Out of desperation, Sarah began drinking alcohol and using psychotropic substances when Harold demanded intimacy. If she tried to resist, he would hold her down. Taking advantage of Sarah's weakened state, Harold repeatedly forced himself on her, and she eventually entered into a relationship with him at his insistence. Sarah fell into a state of depression from which she sought to hide under Harold's supposed protection. She became increasingly restrained and withdrawn. She suffered from victim syndrome and was afraid to leave him or tell anyone. She saw only one way out of her moral confinement, ending her partner's life. Sarah confessed that she made the decision 5 days before the act. On January 14th, Harold came home late in the evening and started working on the sound system. At one point, he asked Sarah to bring him a beer. Knowing that if he drank, he would force himself on her, she decided to act. She added crushed sleeping pills to the beer, which she had prepared in advance. After some time, Harold lost consciousness. Sarah tied his ankles and wrists with zip ties. Then she took a hunting knife and inflicted a deep wound on his neck. During the interrogation, Sarah confessed that, at one moment, she reconsidered her decision to take his life, but Harold was already bleeding out, and she felt she had no choice but to finish what she started. With renewed fury, she continued to stab him in the neck with relentless force, nearly decapitating him. Then Sarah took a shower, packed her belongings, and left in Harold's car, taking Oliver, the dog she had cared for. First, she headed to Texas, then to Florida to see the ocean. That's where the Rangers detained her. The trial for the demise of Harold Sasco began on March 5, 2015, at the Douglas County Courthouse. In his opening statement, prosecutor Charles Branson told the jury that Sarah McLynn had meticulously planned Harold Sasco's end. Lawrence Police Detective Robert Brown testified for the prosecution, showing that before the act, Sarah McLynn had made Google searches using the phrase, "vulnerable places on the neck." She confessed to inflicting knife wounds on the victim and then cutting his throat. When the detective asked her why she ended Mr. Sasco's life, she replied, "I wanted someone to die." Because of these words, the trial focused on her ability to form the intent to commit the act. However, in a private meeting with the judge prior to the trial, prosecutor Charles Branson stated that it would be inappropriate for the jury to hear about Harold Sasco's cruel treatment of Sarah McLynn, and he intentionally omitted this information. He believed that the details of the accusations would be inappropriate at the trial stage because they would merely elicit sympathy for the defendant without any supporting evidence. Branson did not want the years of domestic abuse to become public knowledge. Defense attorney Carl Cornwell agreed with the restrictions on presenting evidence of cruel treatment, which he could have introduced in court. Instead, he tried to convince the jury that Sarah was mentally unstable and unable to fully comprehend her actions. Carl Cornwell argued that Douglas County Judge Paula Martin should send the accused, Sarah McLynn, to a state hospital rather than prison, and if a prison sentence was to be decided, sentence her to 25 years due to her mental illness. However, prosecutor David Melton criticized the defense's portrayal of Sarah as a victim. He added that a psychological evaluation at Larned State Hospital, an impartial entity, showed that McLynn did not meet the criteria for dissociative identity disorder. The district judge reported that she had been found to have borderline personality disorder with antisocial tendencies. The report also stated that Sarah McLynn exaggerated the symptoms of her mental illness. In his courtroom address, the prosecutor added that the crime was not committed by a little sweet girl, but by a methodical and far-sighted criminal who had planned it in advance and intentionally left her mobile phone behind to avoid being tracked. In his closing statement, prosecutor Melton said that in his legal career, he had never encountered something so reprehensible and brutal as the crime committed against Harold Sasco, and therefore, the defendant deserved a sentence ranging from 50 years to life imprisonment.
Some crimes are so evil, so horrendous, that they warrant harsher punishment, Melton said. He argued that Sarah could have chosen a different method, such as suffocation, overdose, or poisoning Sasco. But the fact that McLynn forcefully penetrated Sasco's carotid artery with a long knife spoke to the horror of the act. Addressing the court, the prosecutor repeatedly emphasized that she chose a knife because she wanted to prolong the experience of the act and likely enjoyed it greatly. After considering the arguments, psychological assessments, requests from relatives, and letters to the court, Martin ultimately decided that there is no evidence to support commitment to a psychiatric facility instead of prison, and that the act was committed in a disgusting, barbaric, and brutal manner. Douglas County Judge Paula Martin sentenced Sarah Gonzalez McClin to 50 years in prison. She must serve at least 50 years before becoming eligible for parole, at which time she will be nearly 70 years old. After the sentencing, Sarah apologized to her own family and Harold Sasco's family. Sarah has appealed the sentence based on the provision of ineffective counsel. In the meantime, the defense lawyers began preparing a clemency petition and uncovered necessary evidence of abuse and the dark side of Harold Sasco that had not been presented to the jury during the trial. It turned out that during the search for Sarah, a significant number of crucial clues were overlooked. After all, the investigation's attention was occupied with investigating a crime against life, not proving domestic abuse. An examination of Harold Sasco's phone confirmed that he had repeatedly shown interest in child-explicit material. He downloaded hundreds of videos to his phone and visited X-rated sites discussing children, teenagers, and zoophilia. At least 20 times, he visited websites where men were intimate or appeared to be intimate with women who seemed to be asleep. The police found a camera and flash drives on a desk in Sasco's bedroom. A detective stated that the images found on the flash drives showed that Sasco and Sarah McClin were just friends who spent time together. The defense attorneys were not allowed to review the files. Sarah was shocked and confused when the evidence of harsh treatment was not presented in court. She did not give up on proving that at the moment of ending her aggressor's life, she saw no other way to save herself. On March 20th, 2015, after deliberating for just 4 hours, the jury found Sarah Gonzalez McClin guilty of first-degree premeditated homicide with aggravating circumstances, unaware of the months of harsh treatment that preceded her dreadful crime. Now her lawyers hope to get her out of prison, convincing the governor to pardon her, which is a long-term attempt to correct what they consider an injustice. In 2021, the newly elected district attorney of Douglas County, Susana Valdez, struck a stunning deal. The sentence for Sarah McClin was reduced by half in exchange for waiving the right to appeal. The case of Sarah McClin is one of the most confusing and recurring institutional failures where, in the pursuit of justice, the truth remains sidelined. Currently, Sarah Gonzalez McClin remains incarcerated at the correctional facility in Topeka, Kansas. The earliest she can be released is in 2039. But strangely enough, prison gave Sarah a chance to heal. In her only interview, she admitted that being locked up was the biggest relief for her. She found time to reflect on what had happened. She wrote letters to God, trying to cope with her shame. In prison, she trains Labrador and Golden Retrievers for service in an organization based in Washington, Kansas. Sarah says that the dogs have healed her more than she could have ever imagined. In her statement, Sarah said that since she's been in prison, she's dedicated every day to becoming better, not just for herself, but for her family and society. I will continue to ensure that everything that happened was not in vain, as I am no longer the young woman who felt hopeless and didn't know what to do. At the scene where Harold Sasco's life was ended, the word freedom was written on the wall in blood, a word the investigators initially struggled to decipher. During questioning, Sarah replied that she wrote what she felt after committing the crime. Paradoxically, it was in prison that Sarah Gonzalez McClin found her freedom. "I'm tired. I don't understand how long this can go on, and what am I waiting for? I really loved him. I loved him with all my heart. Yes, I was too young a girl then, when we got married, when we stood in front of the altar and his parents be damned, when I swore before God that I would love him forever and only heaven would part us. Why can't I take it back? Do I have to torture myself day in and day out just because I made those promises? I haven't loved him for a long time. Just like he doesn't love me. He only loves himself, his parents, and our children. But who will love me? In these moments of despondency, I feel that even God has turned his back on me. How else could he have given me to this family for whom I am nothing, who only remember I exist when they need something? Summer, clean this up. Summer, take out the trash. Summer, damn it. Can you stop stomping your feet so loud? I'm sick of it. I have to tell Will everything. Take the kids and get out of this house. But who's gonna let me go, especially with the kids? Will's dad won't even let me leave the house. I hope I stay alive at least. This entry was made by Summer Inman in her personal diary, which she kept hidden from her husband and his parents. This diary, the one place where she could express her thoughts and not be afraid of being judged or even punished. 1983, Logan, Ohio. In a small American town of only 40,000 people, a new evangelical church called Tabernacle of Faith opens, which none of the residents had ever heard of before. The founder of the church, David Oyedepo, traveled to the town from Nigeria and told the congregation that he had an 18-hour meeting with God, during which the Almighty told him that it was time to free the world from the oppression of the devil through preaching and prayer. David Oyedepo was an extremely charismatic preacher, and that is why the Tabernacle of Faith Church became very popular in Logan. It was at this church that Bill and Sandra Inman met. Bill was already 18 years old at that time and played musical instruments at the church on Sundays. Sandra also attended church with her parents. Sandra recalls that the young musician parishioner very much liked her parents, and they did not hesitate to allow the young people to play a wedding. A year later, Bill and Sandra have a son, Will. According to family traditions, Will was born with his parents, went to church, and when he was 17 years old, then just like his father, met in the Tabernacle of Faith with a very young 15-year-old summer cook. Only with marriage young people were not in a hurry and waited until Summer was 18 years old. In 2004, after their wedding, Will's parents insisted that the young people lived with them. Summer did not like this idea, of course, but her husband was very dependent on his father and could not cross him, so she left her parents' house and moved into the house of the Inman family. That same year, another turning point in the Inman family's life occurs. Bill creates his own flock and remodels the family garage, formerly used as a workshop, into a self-proclaimed church. From Summer Inman's diary, Will's father has changed a lot. I literally don't recognize him. Tonight at family dinner, he told us that he hears the voice of God in his dreams and that he wants to share this revelation with others for their own good. Will himself seems to realize that his father is becoming a religious fanatic. I've seen him roll his eyes, but what can he say against it? Yes, indeed, to some, like Summer, Bill Inman's idea may seem delusional, but locals came to his garage in droves, prayed, listened intently to their leaders' speeches, and even made donations. In 2005, Will and Summer had their firstborn son. They named him Alex. But right after the baby was born, everyone realized that their family was in huge financial trouble. The women were forbidden to work anywhere. They were obliged to do only household chores, and 4 adults and 1 infant cannot live only on donations from parishioners and on Will's rare part-time jobs. At a family council, Bill said they were moving to Florida. In Florida, Bill and Will did construction work while the women still stayed home and raised baby Alex. From Summer's diary, not much changed with the move to Florida. All day Will and his father disappear at work, and Sandra and I stay home with Alex all day and night. When is Will going to grow up and be on his own? I don't think I can wait for that. Having come to the conclusion that in Florida a lot of money cannot earn, Bill Inman decides to return to his native state, but because of non-payment of taxes, their house in Logan was taken away, and the court ruled a ban on its subsequent redemption, so they moved to a rented house in the countryside Vinton, which is not far from Logan. There, Summer also gives birth to 2 daughters, Kelly and Alana. From Summer's diary, we still don't have any money. Will wants me to have 12 children for him. I sometimes laugh in his face, which he takes offense to, and sometimes even stops talking to me. In 2010, Bill Inman, now officially the leader of Tabernacle of Faith Church, and together with his wife Sandra,
They register a non-profit organization called Mercy Ranch. A bright idea is born in his head: to build on behalf of the church a home for orphans, widows, and the homeless. But naturally, there was no money for the idea. However, the new leader found a way out of this situation. He invented a lottery, according to which the winner will win $200,000 and the remaining 99 people will receive no less valuable prizes. The remaining funds would be used to build the house Bill dreamed of. Television and radio ads were run, and Bill himself even went door to door at first, asking residents to participate in the charity lottery. The result was stunning. Bill Inman managed to raise $1 million. The grand prize drawing was scheduled for September 2010, but as you may have guessed, no drawing took place in September, just like it didn't take place in October or November. Bill Inman simply defrauded the people who trusted him, and he had no plans to return the money to anyone either. It is during this period that Will's father hires Adam Peters to take care of the landscaping on their property, as well as other household chores. Adam sees Summer all the time and begins to feel sympathy for her. What he doesn't realize is that Summer and Will are having a crisis in their relationship. Nevertheless, he does not give up and gives the young woman signs of attention. After a while, Summer filed for divorce. She took the children and went to her parents. There she got a job for the first time in her life, a cleaner at the bank. Unfortunately, because of her early marriage and constant confinement in the Inman home, she had no education and no work experience other than raising children, so Summer didn't expect to get a better paying job. But deep down she was glad even that, because for the first time in many years she felt independent, and for the first time nobody told her anything. Despite her resentment toward Will, she didn't mind her father seeing the children as much as he saw fit. The children, in her opinion, needed their father as much as they needed their grandparents. Indeed, Bill Inman, despite his tyrannical character, treated the children very affectionately and caring. To deny this was foolish. One day in December 2010, a bailiff came to the Inman house and ordered the family to leave the house for non-payment of rent. Summer found out about it, and so she went over to the house to pick up all the things she hadn't had time to pack when she moved in with her parents. It was scary to show up at a house where she was now considered a traitor, so she called Adam to help her with the packing. When the Inman family saw that Summer had arrived with her new lover, they wouldn't let anyone in the house. They hurled all sorts of curses at them and promised that all of Summer's belongings in the house would be burned in the backyard. Even the police couldn't help with the conflict, as Will attacked and even beat up a policeman who arrived, while Adam, who was shocked by what he had seen, shouted that he would find him and kill him. That same day, Summer decided to file a report against her husband. In it, she pointed out that Will had never been the same, that it wasn't until after the wedding that he became in complete control of her. Her calls, texts, emails, he even controlled her lunchtime and how much she needed to eat, how much time to spend in the shower, and how much time to be outdoors. Periodically, he even took her phone away from her, and Summer could be out of touch for a week, even with her own parents. He also admitted to her that he wanted to find a second wife, and without hiding from Summer, he registered on dating sites where he posted intimate photos of himself and openly corresponded with other women. In her diary, Summer often wrote that she wanted to divorce Will, but was afraid. This fear was understandable. Will had warned her numerous times that if she divorced him, he would shoot her. The police took a statement from a frightened Summer, who had harbored the fear for so many years, and came to the Inman home again. When questioned, Will answered yes. He took his wife's phone away from her, but only so she wouldn't talk to her lover 24 hours a day. Yes, he watched her diet, but only because he cared about her health. His answers didn't seem credible to the police, and they forbade him to go near his ex-wife, and he also received a fine and probation for this behavior. The Inman family could not ignore such, as it seemed to them, abuse of their son, and they in turn wrote a response, but already on Adam Peters. In their statement, they pointed out that when he worked in their house, he showed an unhealthy interest in Summer's young children. and that the subsequent presence of children in his company could end badly. Their fictions, of course, were not confirmed. After that, the worst thing in Summer's life happened. Close to midnight, March 22, 2011, Summer was finishing her work at the bank, which is in the heart of Logan. The branch itself had closed by then, and all she had to do was clean up her workspace, dusting and taking out the trash. She'd texted Adam to tell him that she didn't have much time left and that she'd be home soon. It was already 12 o'clock at night. Summer was late, although she had never been late before. Adam was beginning to get seriously worried. There was no telling what this Will might be up to. Peters decided to meet Summer. By then, the doors to the ward were locked. No lights were on in the windows, which meant Summer wasn't there. Adam walked around the building but didn't see anyone, so he went to the dumpsters where the young woman was hauling the trash bags that had accumulated all day. She wasn't there either, but near the bins he found Summer's things, her purse, her cell phone, and her red jacket, which was lying in the grass, a little farther away from her things. There was no time to hesitate. He immediately dialed the phone number of the police. The police arrived and did a search of the belongings, then knocked on the bank and interviewed the security guards, to which they said that Summer had gone home over an hour ago, and they hadn't seen her again. At the glow of the police car's lights, 3 people approached. As it turned out, they were witnesses to the kidnapping. The 2 women were out for an evening jog, and although it was already dark, they saw a white Ford drive up to the bank cleaner's house. 2 men in black masks get out and push the screaming woman into the back seat. At the woman's screams, another eyewitness ran up to the car and tried to save her, but the blonde woman behind the wheel sprayed him in the face with a gas can, and the guy fell down, and the car with the kidnappers drove away. The women were without phones, so they immediately ran to the nearest police station, where they interrupted each other very emotionally and tried to recount what they had seen. The police officers on duty only laughed at their story, naively believing that the night runners had made it all up. Who would think of kidnapping a bank cleaner with garbage bags in her hands? But as it turned out, the story was now pure truth. And because of the slowness of the cops, it was now impossible to find Summer on a hot lead. Like I said before, Logan is a small town. That's why the news of Summer's abduction by 3 unidentified men spread through the town overnight. By morning, proactive citizens had organized into groups to search for the missing woman. They scoured parks, vacant lots, abandoned warehouses, but Summer was nowhere to be found. A week before she disappeared, Will Inman tried to contest his child support payments. According to the court order, he was supposed to pay $150 for each child, but since his monthly salary was only $500, he asked that the payment be reduced to $150 for the 3 children in total. Will also asked for full custody of his children, but this was denied by the court. Since Summer was not in contact with anyone because of her long, reclusive life, the police suspicions fell only on the Inman family. They were found in the house of Bill's mother in a neighboring town. All 3 said that they had not heard anything about the disappearance, and on the day of the kidnapping, they were in Cleveland, where they wanted to find a new home. At that time, a GPS receiver was taken from the car. During the inspection, it was determined that it had been turned off during the period of Summer's abduction. The police also decided to check the Inman family's cell phones, which revealed that the family had not left Logan that night. Police soon received additional information that at 7:30 a.m. the morning of Summer's disappearance, the white Ford had stopped by a car wash where all 3 of them, Bill, Sandra, and Will, were dry cleaning the interior. The whole family was detained and taken in for questioning. Bill, who was already being led away under the arms of the police, shouted to his elderly mother that they were not guilty of anything, that it was the work of the devil against whom he and his parishioners were fighting. At the police station, the Inmans, as if bewitched, repeated the same thing, and only when it became clear that they had no alibi and they were facing execution, Sandra took the blame. From Sandra Inman's testimony, "Kidnapping Summer was my idea. It was my idea, and I was driving the white Ford that night. Of course, neither of us planned to kill Summer. I swear it was an accident. On the night of March 22nd, we drove up to the bank where Summer worked and waited a long time for her to finally finish her shift. At about 11 p.m., we saw her near the garbage cans near the bank. I drove up to her and my husband, Bill, and son, Will, who hid their faces under black masks, pushed Summer into the car. Again, we had no intention of killing her. The only thing we wanted was for her to let us see the kids since we are family. Will, in an act of intimidation, tied Summer's hands and feet with plastic ties to keep her from running away. Apparently, one of the ties he tightened around her neck, he overestimated his strength, and Summer began to choke, and her face began to turn red. Will wanted to cut the tie, but he couldn't find a knife, and the knife we were taking with us had gotten under my seat, and when he did find it, it was too late. Summer was dead. Sandra Inman showed the place where they hid Summer's body. It was an old well near the Tabernacle of Faith Church. Yes, the same church where Bill and Sandra had first met, and then Will and Summer, the church where both had gotten married and where they'd gone to pray and confess for years. The autopsy confirmed Sandra's words. Summer had indeed died of asphyxiation. No other injuries were found on her body. In 2012, the court sentenced Bill Inman and Will Inman to life in prison, and Sandra Inman, despite taking all the blame, also received a life sentence, but the court allowed her to request parole after 15 years. Why is that? Apparently because, according to relatives, the women in the Inman family never decided anything. The whole family obediently obeyed only Bill, and if it was someone's cruel plan to regain custody of the children, it was his. And Sandra took the blame to save her husband and son, but she never succeeded. The Jared Bragan Case, From Love to Contracted End of Life. No matter how many years a couple has spent together or how happy their marriage was, divorces often lead to a breakdown in amicable, or at the very least, respectful relationships. But sometimes former husbands and wives part ways as true adversaries. Once close partners deliberately make each other's lives miserable, inflict harm, or wish for the other's demise. In rare instances, it doesn't stop at mere wishes, escalating to actual physical confrontations. Today, we'll examine such a case. To begin, it's important to note that the case surrounding the death of 33-year-old Jared Bragan, an employee of Microsoft and father of 4 young children, has yet to reach a conclusion. Currently, 3 individuals have been arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit a planned confrontation resulting in Bragan's death. 2 of them face the ultimate penalty of capital punishment. This sensational story that unfolded in the sunny state of Florida has, without exaggeration, shaken the entire country. Its protagonists are parents of multiple children, once bound by marriage. The motive for the crime is alarmingly mundane: a refusal to split jointly acquired assets and custody of their offspring. However, the approach to ending Bragan's life resembles a complex detective plot. Let's explore how former spouses and deeply religious individuals became the worst of enemies and why it all ended in a tragic demise. Who was Jared Bragan? Jared J. Bragan was born in 1989 in Florida, into a modest family where he was the second of 2 sons. He grew up alongside his older brother Adam, with whom he was practically inseparable from childhood. The brother's parents were devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. As a teenager, Jared met a girl named Mallory Bowden at church. The two developed a romantic relationship, and Bowden would later refer to Jared as her first true love. However, their relationship never led to marriage, as cohabitation was discouraged within their religious community. Therefore, when Jared graduated from a Florida arts high school in 2007 and decided to further his education in another state, they parted ways. Jared moved to Utah, where he enrolled in college. Meeting his future first wife. In 2009, at the age of 20, Jared Bragan met a woman named Shanna Gardner at a friend's birthday party. She was 2 years his senior and came from a well-off family. She was also a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. previously mentioned. Shanna was born in 1987, and her parents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, were co-founders of a major company called Stampin' Up, which specialized in the production and sale of decorative and craft items. By 2010, it was reported that their family business, headquartered in Salt Lake City, was generating an annual revenue of $100 million. Shanna has a sister named Sarah, who currently holds a managerial position in the family business. As an heiress to such a wealthy family, Shanna grew up in luxury and was accustomed to living a life of leisure without ever working in her trained profession as a chef. She was described as enthusiastic and somewhat fickle. According to Mallory, who was mentioned earlier, Jared was initially not too interested in his new acquaintance. However, Shanna went out of her way to entice him with her lavish lifestyle, hinting that together they could travel the world and do as they pleased since her parents would financially support them. Family life and the birth of twins. Just a few months after their first encounter, the couple got engaged, and by early 2010, less than a year after they met, they celebrated a lavish wedding in a temple in Salt Lake City, Utah, with the Gardner family covering all expenses for the ceremony and reception. This quick move to marriage was influenced by the couple's religious beliefs, which frowned upon cohabitation and lengthy engagements. Following their wedding, the newlyweds settled in Utah, where the bride's parents helped them purchase a comfortable home valued at about $1 million. Each spouse also had their own Mercedes, despite Jared still being a student at the time and Shanna not working at all. The couple traveled extensively around the world, sharing numerous photos of their exciting trips, expensive purchases, and leisure activities on their social media profiles. According to close acquaintances, Shanna's parents gave the couple around $10,000 monthly for various expenses, and also granted them free access to their accounts. Moreover, after Jared completed his degree, his in-laws generously provided him with $100,000 to start his own business. In 2013, the couple welcomed twins, a daughter, Abigail, and a son, Liam. The family moved to Connecticut for a time, but soon after, Liam was diagnosed with a heart condition and lung issues. Doctors recommended moving closer to the sea, noting that it would benefit the child's health. The Bragans relocated to Florida, where they purchased a 2-story comfortable home near the coastline at Ponte Vedra Beach, south of Jacksonville. At this time, Shanna actively managed her own blog on social media, portraying herself as a loving wife, a caring mother to the twins, a professional chef, and a woman passionate about travel and sports. She took fitness seriously and visited the gym nearly every day. Seeing her dedication, Jared decided to surprise his beloved and hired a personal trainer for her. The scandalous divorce. Shortly after moving, clear issues emerged in the marriage, though the couple stubbornly pretended everything was fine. Shanna became disillusioned with their religion, almost ceasing church attendance, while her husband remained a devout and exemplary member. This difference in religious commitment led to arguments, misunderstandings, and tension. Reportedly, Shanna also became disillusioned with Jared, whom she perceived as too lazy, having gained weight and still only half-heartedly attempting to get his business off the ground. After completing online courses in programming and design, Jared secured a position at Microsoft, finally starting to earn independently. A few years later, he advanced to a senior manager role. Nonetheless, the couple grew increasingly distant, and arguments became a routine occurrence in their household. The situation escalated when Jared accidentally discovered intimate exchanges between his wife and her personal fitness trainer. According to some sources, Shanna had an affair, which the trainer confirmed in a phone conversation with Jared, though Shanna vehemently denied these claims. Jared then reached out to Mallory Bowden via email, lamenting that his wife had grown distant and emotionally attached to her gym trainer. Despite this, he expressed willingness to forgive the infidelity and preserve their family for the sake of their children. In 2015, after nearly 6 years of marriage, the couple began a contentious and scandalous divorce process. They contested over shared assets and custody rights for their children, far from amicably. Jared publicly accused his ex-wife of infidelity,
which she categorically denied, claiming the marriage had simply lost its love. In response, she accused him of cruelty and offensive behavior. Shanna was unwilling to divide their home, cars, and bank account funds, arguing that nearly everything they acquired over the years was purchased or gifted by her parents. Jared had only started working less than a year prior, having previously focused on his studies and unsuccessfully trying to establish his business with funds from his in-laws. Jared contested this viewpoint, claiming at least half of their Florida home. Custody of the twins also sparked numerous disputes. Shanna claimed that Jared, whenever with the children, tried to turn them against her. He allegedly coached them on what to say about their mother and recorded their statements to present in court. Jared, in turn, accused his ex-wife of comprehensive surveillance, including installing hidden cameras in their home, tapping his phone calls, and placing a tracker in his car to monitor his movements. Shanna sought sole custody of the children and the exclusive ownership of their seaside home. She also claimed Jared threatened to withdraw all the money from their children's trust funds for his personal use. Jared countered by alleging his ex-wife evaded taxes by working off the books at her parents' company and receiving tens of thousands of dollars. New families, old disputes. By the end of 2015, the court had mandated joint custody of the children, but that hardly put an end to the disputes between Jared and Shanna. Even after their divorce was officially finalized, they continued to meet in court for nearly 7 more years, leading up to the tragic conclusion of their saga. By this time, both had moved on to start new families and have more children. In 2016, Jared met a woman named Christina, a fellow Microsoft employee who lived and worked in North Carolina. Initially, their interactions were strictly professional, but they gradually grew closer, and a few months later, Christina moved to Florida to be with Jared. In the fall of 2017, they married, and by February 2019, they welcomed their first child together, a daughter named Bexley. In August 2021, their son London was born. Shanna, too, remarried in 2018, tying the knot with Mario Fernandez, a man a year her junior who owned a real estate business. That same year, they welcomed their son Michael. The family resided in the same house where Shanna had lived with her first husband, Jared, the house that had been a battleground in their court disputes. The presence of new families did not calm the waters between the ex-spouses, who continued to file lawsuits against each other with new demands. Jared insisted that Shanna's new husband, Mario, should not be allowed to be with the twins if their mother was absent. Conversely, he wanted his new wife, Christina, to be fully involved in the upbringing of his older children. The last court meeting between Jared and Shanna occurred 4 months before Jared's death and was exceptionally tense. They exchanged another round of mutual accusations and contested the rights to their property. Shanna claimed that Jared was preventing her from using the family's larger, more comfortable vehicle for transporting the children because he was more concerned with humiliating the mother than with the convenience and safety of his own children. At this point, the court granted Shanna exclusive rights to use the larger vehicle and ordered Jared to pay her $600 in compensation. The tragic end on a secluded road. Per the agreement between the ex-spouses, Jared picked up the twins on Wednesdays for a family dinner, including their younger sister Bexley. Christina sometimes joined them, but after the birth of London, she spent most of her time with the newborn, preferring not to leave him with babysitters. On Wednesday, February 22, 2022, Jared, following routine, took the children to a coastal cafe after picking them up.
After dinner and a stroll, he dropped the twins back at their mother's house and then headed home on his usual route. The journey typically took about 40 minutes, part of which traversed a rather deserted stretch of road without streetlights. It was here that Bragan encountered an unexpected obstacle. Driving slowly and cautiously, aware of his 3-year-old daughter asleep in her car seat, it was around 9 in the evening, and the sun had set when suddenly, in the headlights, he spotted a tire lying in his lane. He stopped, activated his hazard lights, and got out to move the tire to the side of the road. That's when the shots rang out. Jared had no chance to escape. The perpetrator, acting with deadly precision, fired several bullets at close range before fleeing the scene. The child, dozing in the car, was unharmed. A passerby, nearby at the time, heard the shots and cautiously approached. Discovering Jared lying in a pool of blood, he immediately called the police and paramedics, but tragically, it was too late to save the victim. The investigation and initial suspicions Christina called her husband just minutes before the incident, and he informed her that he had just dropped off the children and would be home in about 15 minutes. However, 30 minutes passed, then an hour, and Jared was nowhere to be seen and stopped answering his phone calls. Anxiously trying his number again, Christina was answered by a police officer who informed her of the incident and requested her immediate presence at the Jacksonville Beach police station. The investigation team at the scene determined that the obstacle on the road, a tire, was the reason for Jared's vehicle stopping. They concluded that he had exited his car to remove the obstacle, but was then shot. His 3-year-old daughter, asleep in the car, was unharmed, indicating she was not the target of the mysterious shooter. Furthermore, no valuables were missing from the vehicle, where a wallet with cash, a phone, and a tablet were left, effectively dismissing the robbery theory almost immediately. When asked whether her husband had any known enemies, antagonists, or recent conflicts, Christina stated she was unaware of anyone wishing harm upon her husband, other than his first wife, Shanna. However, she refrained from making direct accusations without incontrovertible evidence. The police reported a lack of surveillance footage due to the absence of cameras on the stretch of road where the incident occurred. A witness who heard the shots claimed they broke the silence of the night, preceded by neither screeching brakes nor loud screams or any other noise. However, they did hear the sound of a vehicle speeding away, though nothing was visible in the darkness. Christina's suggestion of Shanna's involvement in the crime seemed plausible to investigators, yet detectives knew it was unlikely she acted directly, especially given her solid alibi of being at home with her husband, the twins, her younger son, and her parents who were visiting. The police decided to check nearby surveillance cameras. The footage showed an old dark blue Ford F-150 with brown trim entering the area about 15 minutes before the incident, and again a few minutes after the shots were reported by the witness. Detectives turned to the public for help in identifying the vehicle of interest. Jared's family made television appeals, urging anyone with even the slightest information potentially related to the case to come forward. The first suspect arrested, Shanna and her current husband, Mario, were repeatedly called in for questioning, but vehemently denied any involvement in the murder. Shanna didn't hide the fact that her relationship with her ex-husband was complicated, but she insisted she would never wish harm upon the father of her children. She also shared with the media how the 9-year-old twins reacted to the news of their father's death. According to her, Abigail cried uncontrollably for hours, while Liam was in shock and silent for a long time. It's worth noting that neither the ex-spouse nor the older children attended Jared's funeral. Christina had told Shanna that her presence at the farewell ceremony was highly unwelcome, to which Shanna responded that if she wasn't allowed to be there, the twins wouldn't attend the burial either. It wasn't until January 2023, almost a year after Mr. Bragan's murder, that the first suspect was arrested. The police had been silent about the progress of the investigation, only noting that it involved considerable resources and effort. After an exhaustive search for the dark blue Ford F-150, luck finally smiled on the investigation when the vehicle was involved in an accident, but left the scene before the police arrived. This time, the incident occurred in a crowded area with many witnesses, and the offender was identified the same day thanks to multiple camera recordings. The car was owned by 62-year-old Henry Teenan, an unemployed man with previous convictions. He was charged with second-degree premeditated murder using a firearm, participation in a criminal conspiracy with the intent to commit murder, and setting up an ambush with an obstruction for the victim. Jacksonville Beach Police Chief Jonathan Paul Smith and City Prosecutor Melissa Nelson announced these charges during a press conference. It was also revealed that Tenen did not act alone and was giving testimony against his accomplices, though no other names were disclosed at that time to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. Understanding the severity of the charges against him and the lengthy prison term he faced, Tenon decided to make a deal with law enforcement, hoping his cooperation would be considered favorably during sentencing and potentially reduce his punishment. The criminal trio unraveled information soon leaked to the press that the accused, Tenon, had been renting a small house with a friend owned by Mario Fernandez. Tenon's housemate was also brought in for questioning, but was unable to provide any valuable information about the case. He didn't even have personal dealings with the owner of their rental, only passing his share of the rent through Henry. However, a thorough search of the house revealed a hidden pistol in the accused's room, which, according to ballistic tests, was identified as the murder weapon. This further implicated Tenon in the crime. On March 16, 2023, Mario Fernandez was arrested after Tenon officially pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Mario, whom he named as the contractor of the crime. Fernandez faced charges of first-degree murder, criminal conspiracy, and incitement to commit a serious crime. Rumors swirled that Shanna was the mastermind behind the murder. This was supported by her former lover, a fitness trainer who recounted how she had expressed a long-standing dislike for her then-husband and wished for his demise. A tattoo artist, where Shanna frequented, also testified. She recalled Shanna complaining about the endless legal battles with her ex-husband, wishing to silence him forever, and inquiring if she knew someone who could help. Initially taken as a grim joke, Shanna repeated her inquiry months later, clearly indicating her seriousness. Shanna Gardner Fernandez vehemently denied all allegations against her. She declared her intention to stay in town and assist the investigation. However, a few months after her husband's arrest, she moved to Washington with the twins and her youngest son. On August 17, 2023, she faced the same charges as her current husband. Arrested in her Washington apartment, she was extradited to Florida, where she would stand trial alongside the criminal trio. The motive for her actions was cited as complicated relationships with her ex-husband, a desire to avoid sharing custody of their 2 children, and the ambition to solely possess all disputed assets. The ongoing legal battle. As of now, the case remains open, and legal proceedings against all conspirators are underway. Tenon has pleaded guilty to all charges, is actively cooperating with the investigation, and hopes for leniency. Reports suggest he faces at least 15 years in prison, a substantial period for someone of his advanced age, potentially equivalent to a life sentence. Mario Fernandez has only partially admitted his guilt, and exercising his legal rights, has refused to testify against his wife. On the other hand, Shanna Gardner Fernandez vehemently denies all charges against her. Nevertheless, prosecutors are seeking the death penalty or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for the couple. Shanna's 3 children are currently under the care of their maternal grandparents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, and their Aunt Sarah. All world religions and nationalities have the same attitude to family values. A family is a home in which all its inhabitants should be comfortable, regardless of age and gender. Therefore, it should be built on love, respect, trust, and understanding. Family is the source of life. Parents, by their own example, instill in their children important postulates for the continuation of the family and traditions. Many people strive to create a strong and friendly family in which there is a sense of community and harmony. But not everyone succeeds. Sometimes people, creating a marriage, enter into destructive relationships. These ties destroy not only them, but also those who are around, and they tend to be very vulnerable. Hollywood movies show perfect love, full of tenderness and sincerity. Beautiful and strong men literally carry their beloved women in their arms. But reality, as we know, is different from the picture on the screen. This story is about a terrible tragedy that happened in one Indian family. The happiness of one turned into misfortune for the other, towards dreams. Jessica Patel was born on September 16, 1983. Her family lived in a Hindu community in Leeds, West Yorkshire, England. She was the eldest child, so she grew up diligent and obedient from childhood. The girl studied well, helped around the house. At the same time was cheerful, had a perky character. Jessica had many friends, but she especially emphasized Mitesh. The boy was 3 years older than her. Unlike her, he was modest and shy. The children often played with each other. As she grew up, the girl blossomed, becoming more and more beautiful. Like many other peers, she dreamed of falling in love with a worthy man, to have a happy family with a bunch of kids, just like the heroes of her favorite movies. Nevertheless, the fantasies of the young beauty did not prevent her from being intelligent and purposeful. She wanted to be independent, to be established in life. Therefore, in 2002, she entered De Montfort University in Leicester. 4 years later, she continued studying pharmacy at the University of Manchester. There again, Jessica began to communicate with Mitesh, who by chance studied at the same faculty. While the young people did not see each other, the young man matured, became confident and handsome. Gradually, their friendship developed into romantic feelings. Mitesh showered the girl with compliments and gifts, was very attentive and caring. However, the bright streak was suddenly replaced by a dark one. Life presented a serious test for Jessica. Her mother died of an incurable disease. The grief-stricken daughter took the loss of a native person hard. Mitesh supported his beloved in everything, did not leave one with bad thoughts. During this time, the relationship of the couple became stronger. Once Jessica confessed to her sister that she finally found a reliable shoulder. It seemed that her boyfriend was perfect in everything. Happy marriage. In 2008, Mitesh Patel asked the girl's father for permission to marry her according to all Hindu rules. The father did not particularly like the candidacy of the future husband of his daughter. In addition, he believed that it is too early to marry. But Jessica tried to convince him otherwise. And in July 2009, their marriage took place. The ceremony was held in the garden of the parental home of the bride. Family life of the newlyweds seemed as beautiful as the wedding. Soon, however, Mitesh's behavior changed. He became aloof and cold. Jessica complained to her sisters that she began to feel lonely. In addition, the intimate life of the newlyweds left much to be desired. After the wedding, they did not have intimacy for about 10 months. All this was very upsetting for the young wife. She could not understand what happened to the former feelings, looking for a problem in herself. In 2010, Jessica graduated from university. Now she had the opportunity to start a career as a pharmacist. In short, live and be happy, prosperity, higher education, a beloved husband. Except that Mitesh's attitude deteriorated. The man became bossy and suspicious, controlled his wife's every move. In February, her family suffered another grief. Her grandfather fell ill. His health was deteriorating every day. The end was imminent. While the whole family spent the last days by his side, his beloved granddaughter visited him only rarely. Sister Manal later confessed that her husband did not allow Jessica to stay with her parents for a long time, and in general, often go anywhere. On this ground between the spouses, there was a conflict. The young woman did not understand what earned such distrust, which openly informed Mitesh. However, he became more angry and hit the unfortunate woman in the face. The young people came from traditional Indian families where the head of the family has the final say. So she had no choice but to obey the man. Loneliness in marriage. One day Jessica shared her concerns with her family. She said that she suspected her spouse of cheating. According to her, every time Mitesh talked on the phone, he went to another room. Sometimes he did not go to bed until late at night, spending long periods of time alone. In 2012, the wife's assumptions were confirmed. She accidentally saw in her husband's phone love correspondence. Hoping to gain support, Jessica found nothing better than to tell about everything to Mitesh's cousin. They had communicated well earlier, so the young woman was counting on help or advice to save the family. However, Mitesh's brother brushed it off, making it clear that since her husband was cheating, it was all her own fault. This situation deprived Jessica of understanding from her husband's relatives. In parallel, he forbade her to seek comfort in the arms of her sisters. It was clear that Mitesh was hiding something. He was afraid to lose the authority and respect not only of his family, but also of the local community, so he restricted his wife's communication in every possible way, hoping for a miracle. In 2014, Mitesh and Jessica moved to Linthorpe, a suburb of Middlesbrough, North Yorkshire, away from the family. The couple bought a spacious house with many rooms, made renovations. A year later, they rented a premises in which they opened their own pharmacy. Jessica believed that the move would be the beginning of a new life. Relations between them did become warmer. The only thing missing was children. During the 6 years of their life together, the woman could not get pregnant. Mitesh began to hint that if this did not happen, he would be forced to leave her. Therefore, in October 2015, she decided to resort to IVF. The first few attempts were not successful. The woman became nervous and increasingly depressed. Her condition was aggravated by taking hormones. In addition, instead of the expected care and warmth, Mitesh became distant again. He pretended to be a courteous husband only in public, and when he returned home, he would not let the phone out of his hands. He could snap. Nervous tension reached the limit, as a result of which the wife could not stand it and suggested separation. She told her husband that she was disappointed in him and unhappy in the marriage. The man's response surprised her. He began to assure her that he loves her, and in time everything will get better. And the best way to strengthen family ties will be a baby. Jessica believed his words. She had not heard anything like that for a long time, so after receiving a small portion of attention, she calmed down. Mitesh convinced her that he wanted children and a complete family, only did not tell her that for this he had assigned a special role to his spouse. On May 9, 2018, the Patel couple received great news. 3 embryos were successfully fertilized. Their transfer was scheduled for next month. This meant that soon, with the successful development of events, they would become parents. The future mom was over the moon. She was so happy that she hurried to tell her family about everything. Everyone was looking forward to the replenishment, except that it did not happen. A few days later, Jessica was not. Mysterious murder. On the evening of May 14, 2018, the emergency service received a call. The caller turned out to be Mitesh Patel, who found his wife's dead body wrapped in duct tape at home. Gasping with excitement, the man said that he left home to buy something to eat and to see the guys at work, to pick up his laptop. When he returned home, he found his house burglarized and his wife lying unconscious. Sobbing, he added that the woman's skin was very cold and dark marks could be seen on her neck. The dispatcher informed Patel that help was close at hand, with a police unit on its way. When officers arrived on scene, they found the woman's body on the living room floor. Her wrists and ankles were bound with duct tape, and a bag from the grocery store was lying nearby. Unfortunately, there was nothing the paramedics could do to help. Jessica Patel was murdered. Investigators had to figure out what motivated such a brutal crime. The house was turned upside down, and closet drawers were gutted. The criminals were clearly looking for something to eat, as they even ripped up the mattress of the couple's bed. Then jewelry and cash were discovered missing. Everything pointed to a robbery. Moreover, the husband of the murdered woman was convinced that the house had been broken into by robbers. In his statement, Mitesh said that on the unfortunate day he worked his morning shift, then worked out at the gym and came home. After work, his spouse returned around 7 p.m. The man volunteered to go get a pizza and left the house at 7:44 p.m. Thanks to a CCTV camera at a local pizzeria, it was possible to confirm his words. It captured the teller placing the order. He was friendly with the staff and had a relaxed demeanor. Before leaving the establishment, he called his wife to tell her that he would be back soon, but did not get through. On the way out, Mitesh decided to stop at a pharmacy, so he stayed longer than he had planned. At 8:50 p.m., he returned home and saw a horrible picture: scattered belongings and a bound wife. Neighbors were no less shocked by what had happened. The neighborhood where the couple lived was considered one of the most prosperous and peaceful. Nothing criminal had ever happened in the neighborhood in its history. Jessica's autopsy revealed that the cause of death was strangulation. The attacker initially used a bag, after which he wielded his bare hands. Finally, probably to be sure of the victim's demise, he used an electrical cord as a ligature. Since no signs of forced entry were found, the investigation put forward an initial version. The victim knew the attacker and let him into the house herself, an inconsolable widower. As soon as Jessica's family learned about her death, her father, along with her sisters, immediately came to support her unhappy husband. No wonder, because in such terrible moments the family must stick together. They tried to comfort Mitesh as best they could. Despite the fact that the relationship between the spouses was not always simple, the relatives of the deceased embraced the inconsolable son-in-law and tried to find the right words. They themselves were in deep sorrow and agonized in conjecture. Who and why took away from the family favorite daughter, sister, and wife? However, the police seemed suspicious of the robbery, despite its apparent obviousness. After searching the house, the officers found some curious clues, thanks to which the criminal was soon apprehended and brought to trial. In the establishment of the truth also played a big role in the application on the victim's cell phone, monitoring the state of health of its owner. 3 days after Jessica's murder, the lead investigator in the case contacted the victim's father, who was still near Mitesh. The official asked the woman's relatives to return home so as not to interfere with the investigation. He promised to give more details later. In fact, detectives were about to detain the suspect in the case, Nate Patel. There were quite good reasons for his arrest. It turns out that during the search of the house was found a hard disk from a video surveillance camera, which was installed in front of the front door. The device was in a suitcase under the bed. It was later determined that someone had damaged it just a few minutes before the police arrived. The next find was a photograph hidden under the double bottom of the couple's nightstand. It shows Mitesh in an embrace with another man named Amit. In addition, footage from a camera installed in a house across the street showed that on May 14th, the only people who went in and out of the Patel family home were the couple themselves. The footage shows Mitesh returning at 3:30 in the afternoon and never leaving the house again. Jessica did arrive at the end of the workday, parked the car, and entered the building at 7 p.m. The man then left for the pizza place at 7:44 p.m. and returned at 8:50 p.m. No one else but them was in the lens, which meant only one thing. Mitesh was the potential perpetrator, a mystery behind 7 seals. Patel became the prime suspect, but there was no direct evidence against him. So the detectives continued the investigation. During the investigation, the main secret was revealed, which Mitesh so carefully hid from family and friends. Jessica was right when she suspected her husband of cheating, but only it is not known for sure whether she guessed that her husband liked exclusively men. Apparently, marriage to a woman was necessary as a cover for the real orientation. The happiness of Jessica, who was by his side for many years, he cared the least. It turns out that 2 years after the wedding, Mitesh met Amit. But the latter, unlike him, did not hide his preferences, despite the fact that he was also a native of an Indian family. The men immediately liked each other and began to meet secretly. Leaving on a business trip, the exemplary-looking spouse spent time with his lover. In 2016, Amit left for Australia, but their romance continued. In the head of Mitesh, a terrible plan was born. Together with her lover, they wanted to not only start a family, but also become same-sex parents using Jessica's embryos and a surrogate. In his message, Patel revealed that the spouse was undergoing IVF. That's when he asked Amit if they will be together after that. To which Amit replied that it all depends on the outcome of the procedure. While communicating, Mitesh made it clear that sooner or later there will come a time when there will be no obstacles in their relationship. In a recent message, he wrote, "Jessica's days are numbered." It was later revealed that the treacherous spouse was taking drugs that affected childbearing. All this he did in order not to have intimate relations with his wife. The investigation has established. Investigators were also able to reconstruct Mytesh's search history. The man's requests on the internet were strikingly eloquent. How to get rid of his wife, Hindu funeral, the procedure for obtaining insurance payments for the murder of a spouse. In fact, Jessica's life was insured for £2 million.
After her death, her husband planned to cash in the insurance policy and use the proceeds to buy a property in Australia. In recent weeks, Patel had been searching for a suitable home. He wanted to create comfortable conditions for the new family and carefully prepared for it. During the study of the spouse's cell phones, in addition to the denunciatory correspondence, the investigators focused their attention on an application that counted the number of steps taken by the owner of the smartphone for the day. It was found that since 8:04 p.m., Jessica had not moved again. However, after 15 minutes, her phone had already recorded a movement of 14 steps. Apparently, these were her last movements, or someone simply moved the device. As for Mytesh's activity, his phone showed high physical activity readings just prior to his wife's murder. His heart rate was higher than his typical rate. There were sudden ascents and descents of stairs between 7:44 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Apparently, at this point, he was staging a burglary by throwing things around the house. And before calling 911, Patel went upstairs to hide evidence, a hard drive from the surveillance camera. In the safe of the pharmacy the couple owned, police found stolen jewelry and £25,000, as well as a couple of gold bars, all of which the widower said had gone missing from the house during the robbery. Also found there was a skein of duct tape similar to that used to wrap the victim's arms and legs. The torn end of the tape matched the one that was taken as evidence from Jessica's body. Apparently, it was with the goal of getting rid of the evidence that Mytesh stopped by work the evening after the pizza party. Although the man had been planning the crime for several years, he was extremely careless in his approach to the crime and left a mess everywhere. There was no doubt about his guilt. On top of that, the genetic examination of the material collected from under the fingernails of the murdered woman determined the DNA of the spouse. There were also scratch marks on Mytesh's neck, which he did not even try to hide, claiming that he had fallen. The trial and life afterward. Patel did not admit his guilt either during the investigation or the subsequent trial. He said that he did communicate with Armit, but everything that happened was a big coincidence. The trial of the accused lasted 3 weeks. The picture of what happened was established. The husband attacked his wife as soon as she entered the house. She fought back and scratched, but the forces were unequal. Mytesh had initially chosen a different method to kill his wife. A large dose of insulin was found in her blood, which could have been fatal, but much later than the perpetrator expected. An overdose of insulin causes coma and subsequent death. However, anything could have happened during this time. Eventually, the criminal's plan could have been thwarted. So Mytesh decided to finish Jessica off by putting a bag over her head. To make sure his wife was finally dead, he strangled her with his hands and then used a cord. As physical evidence, the prosecution showed empty ampoules that were found in Patel's laptop bag. It took him 20 minutes to take the life of a woman who had been by his side for years and shared the same shelter. The man showed incredible cruelty towards her. He then tied up his wife's hands and feet, making it look like a robbery. Afterward, he drove to the pizza place like nothing happened and even called her. Jessica's family could not believe what they heard. Both sides of the family were in complete shock. No one would listen or believe Jessica when she was looking for help and support. No one even stepped in to try to figure out what was going on in the family, except perhaps Jessica's sisters, but there was little they could do, because they were in an unequal position. It took the jury 2 hours to reach a verdict. On December 5, 2018, the court sentenced Mytesh Patel to life in prison with a right to parole after 30 years. At the end, the judge voiced his thoughts that it doesn't look like the man has any remorse. In all likelihood, the only person Mytesh truly felt sorry for was himself. It is unlikely that the family will ever forgive the man for the sin he committed. They pray for Jessica every day and remember her. According to Hindu beliefs, her soul must be reborn. Since she suffered a lot in life and was unhappy, but remained a good person, in the next incarnation, she will be rewarded. At least that is the comfort of her loved ones, who have nothing else to do but mourn and hope for a reunion after death.
A wedding is one of the most eagerly anticipated and heartfelt events in every woman's life. But not all dreams of happiness end with the fairy tale ending of, "They lived happily ever after and died on the same day." Today, we find ourselves in Somerset, England. This part of southwest England is famous for its well-preserved medieval castles, ancient towns, and legends of King Arthur. But these aren't the only legends that shroud the modern county. On the morning of September 12, 2012, a local resident named Orlando was rushing home after a long night shift at a gas station. He had promised his wife he would take their little daughter Maria to daycare. Loud music played in the car to keep him awake as trees along the road swiftly passed by one after another. Coming out of a sharp turn, he saw black smoke. Orlando slowed down. Smoke was billowing from a nearby parking lot where a car was engulfed in flames. Orlando stopped, ran to take a closer look but couldn't get close because of the fire. 4 minutes later, when the firefighters arrived at the scene, the car was completely burnt out. The arriving police cordoned off the area with safety tape to keep the gathering onlookers at a distance. The place was quite deserted so early in the morning, and there were no witnesses nearby who could describe the incident's exact moment. Upon examining the scene, a charred body was discovered. The police had to identify the victim and determine the causes of this dreadful death. There were no signs of a car accident or skid marks found nearby. Likewise, no tire tread marks from another vehicle were found. A car self-ignition or spontaneous combustion due to malfunctions became the police's initial theory. A lengthy investigation and multiple expert analyses were ahead. The remains were transported to the forensic laboratory to determine the identity and cause of death of the deceased. Fragments of the burned vehicle were also delivered to the forensic laboratory to identify any malfunctions and establish the cause of the fire. The police began their investigation by checking the missing persons database and recent reports of disappearances. Forensic experts quickly identified the deceased. She was a 23-year-old local resident, Katherine Wells Bar. On the same day, a report of a missing person was filed by Raphael Novak concerning the disappearance of the young woman. According to Raphael Novak's report, he left for work at 5:30 a.m., while his girlfriend, Katherine, was still sleeping soundly at home. Although they worked for the same company, his shift started 2 hours earlier. When Katherine did not show up for work after this time, and Raphael couldn't find her at any of her relatives, he contacted the police. The investigation commenced. The police interviewed the victim's parents and sister, as well as Raphael Novak, who reported her missing, and all her colleagues and friends. Gradually, by piecing together information about the last days and, subsequently, the years of the young woman's life, they managed to reconstruct a sequence of events that led to her tragic demise. Katherine Wells Bar was born in 1989 to Phil and Jane Wells Bar in the United Kingdom. She was the second child in her family, with an older sister named Lynn. During the summer of 2010, while on a university break, Katherine met one of the employees, 31-year-old Raphael Novak, on a new vacuum cleaner production line. The tall, ruggedly handsome blonde quickly caught Katherine's eye. He was an immigrant from Poland, with a former wife and son back home. About 4 years prior, he had moved to England in search of a better life. Katherine and Raphael soon started dating. Initially, they met for lunch at the cafe on the production site, but these lunches quickly turned into romantic dinners. Raphael courted Katherine beautifully, gifting her lovely bouquets, taking her to movies, and going for walks. Raphael opened up to Katherine, sharing his past life and reasons for moving to the UK. Katherine's trusting heart let the blonde man in completely. Their relationship progressed so swiftly that within a few months, Katherine introduced Raphael to her parents. They joyfully welcomed their daughter's choice into the family, hopeful for the couple's future happiness. Soon, the lovers were planning their wedding. In 2011, Katherine graduated with honors from Bath Spa University and landed a promising job as a business analyst at Pneumatic International, the company that manufactures Henry vacuum cleaners. She quickly advanced in her career, providing good job opportunities for her parents and sister. Katherine was intelligent and well-educated. She always knew how to approach people, was concerned with her colleagues' problems, and was very attentive to those around her. Her kind gaze and radiant smile endeared her to people who held the young leader in high regard. Katherine Wells Bar's career was on a fast track to success. Her substantial earnings, combined with those of her partner, Raphael Novak, allowed them to purchase a spacious home with a terrace in Willow Way. Despite their financial well-being, the house was bought on a mortgage, for which the young couple secured insurance coverage as per their agreement with the bank. Youth, successful careers, and love. It seemed they had everything needed for happiness. Yet, the fateful day of September 12, 2012, marked a dividing line in their lives, changing everything from before to after. The investigation pressed on, uncovering new and unfamiliar facts about the lives of Katherine and Raphael. Over time, the veil of deceit that had enveloped their relationship from the start began to lift. 29-year-old Raphael Novak left behind a wife and child in Poland, fleeing to escape significant debts. He relocated to the UK, where he met Anna Lagvinovich. Since 2008, they maintained a close relationship. Then Katherine came into the picture. For a while, Raphael saw both women, but ultimately, he chose Katherine Wells Bar, seeing her as a more viable option for a family and financial stability. While Katherine genuinely dreamed of a happy marriage with the man she loved and starting a family, Novak was plotting a scheme to end her life, intending to leave himself and his mistress, Anna Lagvinovich, with the life insurance payout and the large house, a significant portion of the funds for which had been contributed by Katherine. The plot of this crime was meticulously planned and executed with even greater cruelty and cold-bloodedness. On the day of her disappearance, after waiting a few hours, Raphael approached Katherine's boss to inquire about her whereabouts. He feigned sincere panic and despair in front of Katherine's colleagues and relatives. Katherine was not found at her parents' home, nor at her own. Her car was missing as well. Raphael recalled that she had been receiving threatening letters from a certain mentally unstable admirer for some time. Following this, her family contacted the police. The family was in the living room of the young couple's house, awaiting her return, when they were informed that a burning car with a body inside had been found. Raphael mentioned that the evening before her disappearance was entirely normal. The couple had gone for a walk after work, stopped by a store for groceries, had dinner, and then went to bed together after watching some television. Katherine did not appear scared or disturbed. However, a more detailed investigation proved that her death occurred earlier. Katherine was strangled around 2 a.m., likely in her own bed while she was sleeping. Her lifeless body was then placed in the car, taken a short distance from the house, and callously set on fire in an attempt to destroy evidence. Yet Raphael Novak had a solid alibi. He was at work from 5:30 a.m., and according to him, Katherine was asleep in bed when he left. The burning car was discovered between 6 and 7 a.m. However, Raphael was still at home at 1:30 a.m., significantly altering the case's direction. Thus, Raphael Novak became the prime suspect in the murder of Katherine Wells Bar. Evidence allowed for Novak to be detained pending further investigation. Raphael claimed that Katherine was being pursued by a stalker who had repeatedly written to her and driven her to hysteria. During the investigation, it was revealed that Katherine indeed had accounts on several adult websites, indicating a hidden side of her life unknown to her close ones. Intimate photos and flirtatious exchanges with men were found, along with a letter from a secret admirer. However, no matter how long you try to twist the truth, it always comes to light. In an attempt to mislead the investigation and direct it towards a false trail, Raphael forgot to destroy the evidence proving his direct involvement in Katherine's demise. Importantly, this provided the prosecution with a motive. Upon examining Novak's phone, investigators discovered that he never ceased communication and meetings with Anna Lagvinovich. They actively met over the last few months. Additionally, it was found that the man had a financial interest as well, as shortly before Katherine's demise, they both insured their lives for a sum of £123,000. Katherine and Rafal were the sole beneficiaries of the insurance contracts and recipients of the payouts for each other. The receipt of a substantial life insurance sum emerged as the primary motive in the case regarding Katherine's demise and the arson of her car to confuse the investigation. Police discovered that on the day of her disappearance, Katherine sent a message to Anna Lagvinovich's phone. Also, surveillance cameras revealed that a few days before the crime, Anna, along with a relative, her uncle, filled a full canister of gasoline at a gas station. Thus, a third party became involved in the case. 32-year-old Anna Lagvinovich and her 38-year-old uncle Tadeusz Dmitrushin became suspects in the complicity of intentional crime and arson to conceal evidence. The crime was meticulously planned over several months by the trio. They prepared thoroughly for the act, creating accounts on pornographic websites, uploading photoshopped images of Katherine, and fabricating and saving exchanges with various men, all to lead the investigation astray with a false trail. They didn't resist the irrefutable evidence for long. When Rafal and Anna realized it was futile to deny any longer, they started blaming each other. The man insisted that Anna, out of jealousy, devised and executed the plan to eliminate a rival. In contrast, she accused Novak of committing the crime out of greed, aiming to secure the insurance payout in the house. In an attempt to avoid exposure, the conspirators wove a web of heartless lies around an honest and joyful young woman. They posted her fake profiles on websites used by people looking for casual, intimate encounters. The conspirators went to great lengths to conceal their crime, not only setting her body ablaze but also fabricating a completely false backstory for her. They aimed to portray Katherine as a promiscuous woman, full of secrets and desires. They convincingly created the image of a mysterious lover who could have ended her life. One of the conspirators sent a text message from Wells Bar's phone at 5:17 a.m. on the day of her demise to this fictitious man, suggesting she was headed to meet him. However, forensic experts determined that when the fire started in the car, Katherine was wearing only her favorite nightgown, not the outfit she would have chosen for a meeting with a man. They discovered a pillow was missing from her bed, and the only pillowcase had been washed and was hanging on a clothesline, leaving the police to believe she was suffocated. In Anna Lagvinovich's car, detectives found a SIM card linked to the number Katherine was supposed to have texted that morning. In Lagvinovich's apartment trash bin, they found notes she had written, seeking inspiration for messages supposedly sent by the mysterious person. As soon as Novak and Lagvinovich realized the game was up, they both claimed that Katherine's demise was the act of a hired criminal. A week before the trial began, Lagvinovich asked a fellow inmate to secretly pass on a fake confession from an imaginary hitman who claimed Novak paid him £20,000 sterling to end Katherine's life. The story penned by Lagvinovich might have offered a chilling insight into what happened to their victim. According to this fictional hitman, Katherine's body was in the trunk of the car. Novak was very pleased that he ended Katherine's life. The supposed hitman wrote, "I helped him place her in the driver's seat." Novak removed the tape from her mouth and put on her shoes. He buckled her seatbelt and kissed her goodbye. At 6 a.m., I approached Katherine's car and, following Novak's instructions, set it on fire. Rafal Novak played the role of a loving boyfriend perfectly in the days leading up to Katherine's demise, holding hands and kissing her in front of family members. He told her mother, Jane, "I've lost my world. I've lost my future." Rafal Novak refused to acknowledge his involvement in the young woman's death and went further, telling her mother, Jane Wells Bar, that her daughter was receiving emails and text messages from an ex-boyfriend who said if he couldn't have her, no one could. To complete the narrative, he even claimed she spoke of taking her own life. Worse still, Novak let the distraught Wells Bar parents comfort him, who believed he was also mourning the young woman he loved. Rafal's acting was so convincing that Katherine's mother, Jane, hugged him after her death and allowed him to call her Mom.
She said that after the police told her in the early days of the investigation that he was seen more as a witness than a suspect, she decided to offer him all the support possible. I thought if Katherine loved him that much and he was part of our family, then he deserved to come back. The lengthy trial commenced under the chairmanship of Justice Sharp. The jury heard during the trial that the three defendants hoped to receive a life insurance payout of £123,000 sterling and half ownership of a two-bedroom home in Mangold, Somerset, valued at £137,000 sterling, following Katherine Wells Bar's death. The court was told that Rafal Novak showed no emotion when police discovered the woman's body in her burned car on the morning of September 12th. Anna Lagvinovich, who often shook her head and laughed on the defendant's bench when Novak suggested she was responsible for the crime, refused to take the witness stand. Dmitry Sheen also did not testify in his defense during the trial. Sharp told the defendants that the murder was a terrible, merciless crime, cold-bloodedly committed with a gross breach of trust. None of the three showed any emotion during the sentencing. Judge Justice Sharp sentenced the three Polish nationals to mandatory life sentences with a minimum of 32 years in prison without the possibility of early release. You took the life of a beautiful young woman who had everything to live for, all for money, Sharp said. Rafal Novak, the photos of you holding Katherine's hand the evening before her death, buying groceries for what you knew was her last dinner, are utterly chilling. Your emotions were directed only at yourself. Anna Lagvinovich, your behavior was deceitful, manipulative, and cruel. You played your full part in this horrendous crime. And you, Hadeus Dmitrishin, it was a murder for gain. There were substantial aggravating circumstances and no mitigating circumstances. The judge continued, Many tears have been shed in this court, but the only tears anyone should shed are for Katherine and her family, her mother Jane, father Philip, and sister Lynn. The judge expressed heartfelt sympathy for Katherine's parents. They could never have known that behind the facade presented to them by Rafal Novak was a person devoid of remorse and decency. It was all about the money, the judge said. Novak and Katherine had no ties binding them. They were not married, nor did they have children. The crime against Katherine was motivated by money, selfishness, and greed, while in the case of Anna Lagvinovich, it stemmed from jealousy and a desire for revenge. At the request of the parents, Judge Justice Sharp read statements from Katherine's mother and sister. Her mother wept in the courtroom as her statement was read. It said, Katherine was a caring, loving, sincere, generous, loyal, thoughtful, exceptional, and amazing young woman. She had a bright and promising future with so much potential. As her parents, Phil and I were immensely proud of the young woman she had become. The manner of Katherine's passing, a cruel, calculated act of villainy, and the hatred shown to her will haunt us for the rest of our lives. I never got the chance to say goodbye or tell her I love her, or for Katherine to say, I love you, Mommy. Now, she considers Novak an evil person who should spend the rest of his life behind bars. Katherine's father, Philip, added, We took him into our home. He became like a son and betrayed us all. During the trial, Rafal Novak, covered in tattoos, wept in the witness box, insisting he had no part in the demise of his true love. A father of one, who has a wife and a teenage son back in Poland, told the jurors, Everyone is blaming me for something I never did. The court heard that Novak showed no emotion when the police discovered Katherine Wells Bar's body in her burned car on the morning of September 12th last year. Her mother, Jane Wells Bar, told the jurors that he didn't even mention Katherine, instead asking for a steak dinner after his initial release from police custody. Mrs. Wells Bar said that as soon as they bought a house together and took out a life insurance policy, her daughter's fate was sealed. I told the police her life had a bounty on it. Indeed, she had signed her own death warrant the moment she signed the mortgage. It was all over. Thus, 31-year-old Rafal Novak, a factory worker, was found guilty of the crime against his girlfriend, having suffocated her with a pillow while she slept. Afterward, he orchestrated a conspiracy with his secret lover and her uncle to claim a life insurance payout of £123,000 and a share in the house. His secret lover, 32-year-old Anna Lagvinovich, and her uncle, 38-year-old Tadeusz Dmitryshin, transported Wells Bar's body in her car to a remote location and set it ablaze. It is believed that Lagvinovich and her uncle, 38-year-old Tadeusz Dmitryshin, who also lived in Taunton, took Wells Bar's body in her Ford Focus to a remote location 7 miles from the city. They set the car on fire at 6 a.m., by which time Novak was already at work, providing him with a solid alibi. The jurors of the Royal Court of Bristol found Rafal Novak, Anna Lagvinovich, and Tadeusz Dmitryshin, all originally from Poland, guilty of the crime. The crime was the culmination of months of secret meetings and phone calls between Rafal Novak and his Polish lover, Anna Lagvinovich, with Katherine completely unaware of her role in what turned out to be a love triangle. The accused spent months leading detectives on a false trail, creating fake profiles for the girl on adult websites, and sending her messages from a supposed mysterious lover. Following the verdict, the parents of the young woman who lost her life, Katherine Wells Bar, called for stricter immigration controls. Philip and Jane Wells Bar, who have separated after the tragic loss of their daughter, stated that Rafal Novak, convicted of assaulting his wife in Poland, would not have been allowed entry into the UK if the immigration rules were as stringent as those in the United States of America. They blamed the European Union and stated that the UK needs to tighten its entry measures for foreign nationals. 46-year-old Jane Wells Bar said, "People coming into this country are not checked. We didn't know Rafal had been charged with assault when he was in Poland. I'm absolutely certain our government needs to wake up and stop allowing such negative elements like Rafal Novak to roam freely in the country." Family members of Katherine Wells Bar wept in court as the sentence was announced. The 3 perpetrators showed no emotion. The criminal trio received life sentences without the possibility of parole. Now they have their whole lives ahead to ponder over criminal schemes, but without any chance to put them into practice. Thus, through their own efforts, the Polish immigrants traded their dreams of a successful and wealthy life for free prison cells. After the verdict was announced, the victim's mother spoke her final words, describing her daughter. "She was a beautiful girl, absolutely beautiful. We were so proud when she earned a first-class degree from the University of Bath Spa. She was determined, hard-working, beautiful. We don't know how to go on without her. She had so much to live for. She had such great potential. She had so much for a happy life. But she was robbed, her life taken away. We were robbed."